I've spent many hours on this channel talking about Blue Archive, but I've never made a video solely dedicated to the strengths and weaknesses of the playable characters in this game. And so, in celebration of hitting 5,000 subscribers on this channel, I have made this review of every single character in Blue Archive. This video is aimed at players at all levels of the game, but it is not a meta tier list, nor is it a guide for clearing Total Assault Insane. There are a lot of fantastic videos about that on YouTube, which I'll talk about more near the end of this video. Spoiler alert, go watch Kasu's videos. They are amazing for clearing Total Assault. But I am firmly of the belief that just about every Blue Archive character has a role that they can fill in the game. And so this particular video will be aimed at anyone who wants to know more about their characters, as well as what niches they can fit in the game. At the time of this video's release, there are over 100 playable characters on the global server. So, I've had to split this review into two videos, the first of which you're watching now. In this video, I'll cover the students from Abydos, Gehenna, and Trinity, which is still a ton of students to cover, but I've left lots of timestamps throughout the video, so don't feel like you have to tackle this in one go. And you can always come back to different sections as you obtain characters from your gacha rolls. Throughout the course of this video, I'll go over every character alphabetically by school, and I'll talk about their personality, their skills, and what their playstyle is within the game. Most characters can be obtained by rolling on any Blue Archive banner, but I'll be sure to indicate which characters are limited to events, and which can be obtained from in-game shops and missions as well. Contrary to my earlier understanding, it unfortunately looks like limited students cannot be obtained from the Expert Permit shop, so my apologies for that confusion. I've made sure to add that to the pinned comments on my previous videos, but I also wanted to shout it out here to completely clear up any confusion on that front. I always want to be giving correct information here, so thank you so much for pointing that out so I could get that corrected. Before we hop into all the reviews, here are a few pieces of general advice for building characters. If you are interested in playing a character, it's generally worth investing at least 3 levels into their EX skill, and then either 4 or 7 levels into their passive skills. Now this is because you'll see the biggest increase in passive effects at levels 4 and 7 compared to any other level jumps. So hitting these skill levels is the best bang for your buck. If there are characters you really want to invest in, and you do have the resources to do so, getting a character's EX skill to 5 and their most valuable passive skill to 10 can be a worthwhile investment. But that requires a lot of in-game currency, so don't feel pressured to do this, especially if you have several characters that you want to level up. In addition, getting 1 and 2 star characters up to a 3 star is always worthwhile, as they get extra stats and unlock more passive skills. And leveling up friendship is a fantastic way to beef up those stats even further. For the few characters that have unique items, it's well worth the effort to reach friendship level 20 to equip them, as the unique items all have great stat increases and additional effects. However, it is a lot of work to reach friendship 20, so don't worry if it takes a while to get there. I'll make sure to indicate whenever a character does have the option of a unique equipment during this review. I hope that this will serve as a helpful guide to all the characters currently released on the global server, and at the end of the video, I'll also include a quick overview of some of the characters I'm the most excited for in future patches. Without further ado, let's start our review of all the students in Blue Archive, starting with Abydos Academy. Abydos Academy was once one of the most powerful schools in all of Kivotos, but due to abnormally fast desertification and greedy corporate interests, most of the district is now buried in sand. At the time of writing, only 5 students still remain at the school, and they are fiercely loyal to their district and work tirelessly to keep Abydos Academy afloat. Although she is only a first year, Okusora Ayane has already become a trusted member of the Abydos Foreclosure Task Force, and her quick tactical thinking sets her apart as the brains of the operation. As the task force's secretary, Ayane not only maintains meticulous records of Abydos, but she also serves as the all-purpose support for the school's operations. As a backline unit, Ayane's skills reflect her supportive role within the task force. Her EX skill heals allies in a decently sized AoE, whereas her passive skills increase the max HP of all allies, as well as their resistance to critical hits from enemies. Ayane's final passive increases her own healing capabilities. Ayane is at her best in mission and event stages, as she is a very reasonable healer, especially when you need to hit a group of allies with a pretty massive heal. There are very few 2-star characters who can provide AoE healing, and Ayane fulfills that role quite nicely, particularly with her EX skill only costing 4 to cast. The increased survivability from her HP boosting passive is also quite nice for keeping your team members up and moving throughout the course of a mission. That being said, Ayane's AoE healing does have a slight wind-up animation, so if your team starts moving before she airdrops the healing items, you can potentially miss some or even all of your on-field strikers. As a result, she is a character who requires careful planning when deploying her EX skill, which makes her a little less beginner-friendly than I would like. In addition, her healing is entirely dependent on activating her EX skill, which is not the case for several other healers in the game, and that can make it difficult to justify running her if you have other healers you like more. All of this being said, if you feel like you can master the timing of her EX skill, she makes for a very worthwhile healer for running missions or even healing-based firing drills. Ayane's Recollection Library unlocks at Friendship level 5, and she is a permanent character obtainable by making gacha rolls or from Abydos events. In addition to her regular form, Ayane has an alternate version that can be obtained from playing the Abydos Resort Restoration event. Ayane's tactical prowess really shines in her swimsuit form. Instead of focusing on healing, Swimsuit Ayane takes to the skies in Abydos' Soul Helicopter, which was obtained through very careful planning and resourcefulness with the school's meager resources. Swimsuit Ayane's EX skill summons her onto the field, where she can repeatedly fire off missiles from the Abydos helicopter. Her passive skills increase her own crit rate, and every 30 seconds, whether she is on the field or not, she will fire off a missile that ignores 60% of an enemy's defense. And once she reaches a 3-star, she unlocks a passive that boosts the crit damage of all allies. Despite starting out as a 1-star, Swimsuit Ayane is a very fun backline damage dealer, and her passive that increases crit damage of all allies is comparable to some of the best supports in the game. She can deal a considerable amount of damage with just her EX skill, but her passive skill that ignores 60% of an enemy's defense is quite efficient. With Swimsuit Ayane's EX skill only costing 4, it's also quite feasible to activate her on-field damage several times during a fight. Compared to other vehicle characters, Swimsuit Ayane's time on the battlefield is notably short. Her EX skill will only summon her to fight alongside your allies for 30 seconds, which is a whole 20 seconds shorter than most other vehicle characters. That being said, I've found her damage output and her crit damage passive to reasonably offset this, but it is something to keep in mind since she will need to be resummoned to the battlefield more frequently than other vehicle characters. However, I've found that more times than not, she is a very defensible character who can passively buff your team's crit damage while also dealing on-field damage herself. And if you like the look of her playstyle, she can be a lot of fun to play for content clearing. Swimsuit Ayane's Recollection Library unlocks at Friendship level 5, and she can only be unlocked from the Abydos Resort Restoration event. As the president of the Foreclosure Task Force, Takanashi Hoshino carries the weight of Abydos on her shoulders. Although she enjoys complaining about her old bones and takes more than her fair share of afternoon naps, Hoshino is tremendously protective of her Abydos underclassmen and is willing to sacrifice herself to keep them safe from harm. Hoshino's protective nature makes a full appearance in her gameplay. Her EX skill summons a shield and pushes back opponents with 5 successive shotgun blasts. At EX levels 3 and higher, each shotgun blast will also stun enemies. Once per battle, when her health drops below 30%, she will trigger a passive that will gradually recover lost health, and her other passive skill increases her overall defense. As a sturdy tank, Hoshino is very defensible for clearing missions, but she really excels in specialized game modes like Total Assault, especially Total Assault HOD. Her EX skill can trigger stun effects 5 times per activation, allowing her to fill up HOD's stun bar very effectively. If she ever takes too much damage, her passive skill can activate once per battle to heal her back up again, which is quite useful in a pinch. Hoshino's stun abilities do come at a high premium, as it requires heavy investment in her EX skills to activate, and with her relatively low base attack, she'll also want investment in her equipment to make her attacks even more defensible. In addition, because her passive skill only heals gradually over time, she is more at risk of dropping from large enemy attacks compared to other self-healing tanks. If you do want to run her for missions, I'd still make sure to bring a healer or at least a shielder, just to make sure that she stays up and moving. That being said, I have thoroughly enjoyed her for Total Assault HOD, or even Chesed, where she can make those fights considerably easier. So if you do happen to roll her, she's worth building just for those fights alone. Hoshino's Recollection Library unlocks at Friendship level 9, and she is a permanent character obtainable through gacha rolls or by grinding hard missions 7-3 and hard mission 11-3. While Hoshino's regular form specializes in Total Assault, her alternate form is arguably one of the most versatile in the entire game. Swimsuit Hoshino perfectly pairs her laid-back attitude with her desire to support her friends, allowing her to fully unleash her power as the president of the Abydos Task Force. Her EX skill increases the attack of everyone around her in a gigantic AoE, and the buff lasts for 50 seconds. If those characters happen to deal explosive damage, they'll deal even more explosive damage from this buff, but the prolonged attack buff by itself is already a huge bonus. However, Swimsuit Hoshino gets powered up even further by her passive skills, which increases EX cost regeneration by a substantial amount for the 50 seconds that her EX skill is active. Cost regeneration is a very coveted skill in Blue Archive, as it directly impacts how fast your EX skills regenerate after they're used. Consequently, Swimsuit Hoshino not only improves the attack of your on-field characters whenever she uses her EX skill, but she also makes their EX skills regenerate faster for 50 seconds. That is an absurdly powerful combination of abilities. In addition, Swimsuit Hoshino fully lives up to her role as the supportive tank by sporting increased defense and attack from her passive abilities, as well as healing herself for a small amount every 40 seconds. Swimsuit Hoshino is an extremely fun character to play. Her EX skill makes your team hit so much harder and faster, and the wave animation that goes along with this buff has spectacular visual design, making it so you know exactly when the buff has run out and needs to be reapplied again. As a result, Swimsuit Hoshino is fantastic for a variety of settings. She makes mission clearing more comfy while bringing a decisive edge to Total Assault. However, it should be noted that Swimsuit Hoshino requires considerable investment to perform at her highest level. Her EX skill costs 6 to cast until it reaches max level, coupled with the heavy investment in equipment and skills to increase her damage output. She can be a very resource-intensive character to use at her full potential, and that can be a lot for many players to shoulder, especially when there are a ton of other characters who could use that investment as well. This is all before we talk about the difficulty in obtaining Swimsuit Hoshino in the first place. She is what I like to call a hyper-limited character, as she can only be guaranteed during her 4-day banner during the Momoyodo beach event, after which she only has a small chance of appearing on other hyper-limited banners. These hyper-limited banners only happen once every 6 to 8 months. So if you do want Swimsuit Hoshino, you'll really want to ensure that you have 24,000 pyroxene saved up for when a hyper-limited banner rolls around, or even better, for when her specific banner reappears again. This is not to say that it is impossible to obtain Swimsuit Hoshino. She just requires careful planning and discipline in saving up pulls and resources. But given how many extra characters you can obtain from hyper-limited banners, she can be well worth all that planning and saving in the long run if you do want her on your team. Swimsuit Hoshino's Recollection Library unlocks at Friendship Level 2, which is a small mercy after all that work that goes into obtaining her. The emotional pillar of the Abydos task force, Izayoi Nonomi, does everything she can to make the best of every situation. Nonomi is quick to make friends out of her enemies and lighten the spirits of her comrades as they try to salvage the Abydos district. Despite coming from considerable wealth, Nonomi is comfortable getting her hands dirty in battle and has seen her fair share of fighting while studying at Abydos Academy. Nonomi's infectiously cheerful demeanor combines with her brute force when it comes to combat. Wielding a gigantic machine gun, Nonomi's EX skill sweeps machine gun fire across the stage in 2 huge AoE swings, while her passive skills increase her attack as well as her crit damage. She does extra damage when fighting large-size enemies, which can be fantastic for clearing larger bosses, as well as armored tanks. Despite being one of the few starter characters in the game, Nonomi does not feel like an underpowered beginner character. On the contrary, she is extremely fun for clearing missions and commissions, as her machine gun fire is very effective at dealing with large swaths of enemies. She can also be very helpful for clearing mobs in Total Assault Chesed if you don't have any other piercing characters with effective AoE. Nonomi's main weakness is that she's somewhat outclassed by other piercing AoE characters when you get access to them, and she can fall out of teams at higher level comps as a result. She is also the only character in the game who cannot be obtained outside of the beginner tasks, meaning that in order to increase her star ranking, you must spend generic elephs to bring her up. This can be a little bit restrictive, especially if you want to spend those elephs on other characters, but thankfully she starts out as a 2-star character, so you need to spend less elephs to get her to a 3-star as a result. However, despite these restrictions, Nonomi is an extremely reasonable and quite fun character for clearing missions and total assault chess ed, and building her during the early to mid-game is well worth the investment. Nonomi's Recollection Library unlocks at Friendship level 5, and she can be obtained by completing tasks in the First Attendance Guide mission, available to all new players. Finally achieving her dream of fighting crime in a swimsuit, Nonomi's beach form is fully geared to deal tremendous damage. While Nonomi's regular form highlights her powerful AoE damage, her alternate form exemplifies her devastating single target damage. The Swimsuit Nonomi's EX skill deals a gigantic amount of damage to a single target, followed by a series of buffed normal attacks that deal extra damage from her passive skills. Every 40 seconds, she also increases the attack speed for all allies in a round-shaped area surrounding her. With very reasonable base attack power and attack speed, Swimsuit Nonomi is a very good auto-attacker for mission clearing, but the pinnacle of her abilities are in single-target joint firing drills as well as total assaults, particularly Total Assault Hieronymus, where her EX skill deals gigantic blows to the boss. In addition, her passive will increase the attack speed of her surrounding allies, which allows for faster clear times for those more challenging game modes. That being said, Swimsuit Nonomi's EX skill does come at a significant cost of 6 to cast, which makes it a lot less spammable during content clearing. Her quick auto attacks can make up for this if you do want to run her, but do keep in mind her EX skill will often be dead weight in your skill bar if you're just running her as an auto attacker. That being said, she's a very good auto attacker, so it can be well worth running her all the same. Swimsuit Nonomi unlocks her Recollection Library at Friendship level 5, and she is a permanent character obtainable by making gacha rolls. Although she may come across as a prickly tsundere, Kuromi Serika is fiercely defensive of Abydos and her clubmates. As the dutiful treasurer of the Abydos task force, Serika constantly searches for ways to save her school from impending financial disaster, working every part-time job she can to try and find as much money for the school as possible. Serika's overworked spirit is quite evident in her gameplay, which is centered around shooting as quickly and forcefully as possible. Her EX skill increases her attack power by a significant amount, and her passive skills increase her attack speed after using her EX skill. Every 25 seconds, she will fire an even more powerful shot at a single target. As a character based heavily around auto attacks, Serika's impact on a battle can be less immediately apparent, but her attack power should not be underestimated. She can be a crucial source of damage in regular missions, firing drills, bounties, and even Total Assault Hieronymus, as her EX skill only costs 2 to cast, and it can easily be chained with other EX skills to push rapid attacks at her targets. However, her auto-attack nature can make her somewhat unpredictable for clearing mobs, as you cannot choose who she targets and must rely on her auto-targeting. This is a much less daunting proposition with her EX skill only costing 2, as increasing her attack speed will increase the number of shots she can make at a target, but the unpredictability of her targets can still make her playstyle a little bit different from characters who can quickly wipe mobs with their EX skills. Despite this, Serika is a very reasonable damage dealer, as her EX skill is very spammable while dealing very defensible auto attack damage. And she is well worth building if you need a character with a low EX cost who can help with content clearing. Serika's Recollection Library unlocks at Friendship level 9, and she is a permanent character obtainable by making gacha rolls or from Abydos events. In classic Serika fashion, the second a new part-time job opens up, she applies for it immediately. And that is how our hardworking treasurer finds herself as a shrine maiden. Whereas Serika's normal form focuses on auto attacks, her New Year form deals sweeping AoE damage as a backline special unit. New Year Serika's EX skill brings her temporarily onto the field, where she sweeps gunfire across the stage and decreases incoming crit damage from enemies struck by her blows. Every 40 seconds, she increases the attack for on-field allies in a round-shaped area, and her other passive skills increase her own attack and the crit resistance of allies. As a backline special unit, New Year Serika can provide pretty reasonable damage in a large swath of the battlefield. The AoE of her attack is wide enough to hit a substantial number of enemies, which can be a lot of fun in joint firing drills focused on mobs of robots. And with her EX skill only costing 3 to cast, it's relatively spammable during a mission. However, as much as I am obsessed with New Year Serika, I have to admit that her attack scaling is rather limited, making her attacks less damaging than they could be otherwise. Even when I've leveled her, I still struggle to fully clear mobs when I use her EX skill, which isn't a deal breaker, but it is something to consider if you want to run her for mission clearing. Her passive skills are also a little less useful than some of the other support characters, as crit resistance is certainly helpful, but if you have a good healer and a decent tank, this passive has a little less utility for mission clearing than supports who can improve HP or damage dealing capabilities. This being said, I still stubbornly run New Year Serika in every firing drill that I can, as her AoE damage can still help with clearing robot mobs in certain stages, but I will admit that her overall utility is a little more limited than some other support characters we've talked about, so be prepared for that if you do want to build her. New Year Serika's Recollection Library unlocks at Friendship level 5, and she is a permanent character obtainable from gacha rolls. Last, but certainly not least, Tsunaokami Shiroko is the poster girl for Blue Archive, and she is the first student that Sensei meets from Abydos. Although she may appear quiet and mild-mannered, Shiroko is anything but. From plotting elaborate bank heists to biking hundreds of kilometers across Kivotos, Shiroko is always on the move and ready to make whatever morally dubious decisions are needed to keep Abydos afloat. Shiroko's access to questionable weaponry makes a full appearance in her gameplay. Pulling out an attack drone with her EX skill, Shiroko rains down gunfire on her enemies. Her passive skills increase her crit rate, while also granting her a 20% chance to increase her attack speed whenever she auto-attacks. Every 25 seconds, Shiroko throws a grenade at her opponents, exploding in a small AoE upon contact. Shiroko's strength is most evident when you actually see her in action. Although her EX skill is worded as if she only hits one target, the reality is that her EX skill focuses on one target at a time. And if Shiroko's drone knocks out an opponent before the drone finishes firing, it will switch targets and continue firing at the next closest enemy. This can result in Shiroko wiping out 2 to 3 enemies all on her own. And when her EX skill only costs 2 to cast, this is a gigantic boon for clearing missions, firing drills, bounties, and even total assault. In addition, her passive skills do very reasonable damage all on their own, and if enemies are tightly clustered together, Shiroko can hit several of them at once with her grenade shot. The main drawback of Shiroko's abilities lies in her attack range. Shiroko's EX skill and grenade throws don't cover the entire map, so she needs to be somewhat close to her targets to maximize damage. As a result, carefully timing when her EX skill is triggered can be key, as she can blank her drone multi-attacks if she is too far away from her targets, even if the drone itself is technically closer. This is much less of a concern for firing drills and total assault, but it's something to keep in mind if you're using her for mission clearing. From my experience, Shiroko is extremely fun to play. Her EX skill is very spammable and makes her a very easy inclusion to many teams. If you like her playstyle, she's well worth building if you happen to roll her. Shiroko's Recollection Library unlocks at Friendship level 9, and she is a permanent character obtainable from gacha rolls or from grinding hard missions 3-3 and 9-3. In her alternate form, Shiroko fully embraces her sporty nature and rides her trusted bike directly into battle. Cycling Shiroko focuses heavily on AoE damage, turning her questionable water bottles into exploding projectiles against her opponents. Cycling Shiroko's EX skill tosses a questionable water bottle at a group of opponents, exploding in an AoE of damage that will also debuff the enemy's attack. Every 40 seconds, she will also deal damage to any opponents in a straight line from her location, and her other passive skills increase her attack speed, as well as her damage output against enemies inflicted with status ailments or debuffs. As an AoE damage dealer, cycling Shiroko is very defensible for mission clearing, mob-based firing drills, and total assault Porodzilla. Her ability to debuff enemy attack synergizes well with her passive skill, which allows her to deal extra damage to enemies so long as that debuff remains. Pairing her with other characters that can inflict status ailments or debuffs themselves can help maximize her damage even more. Cycling Shiroko is slightly outclassed by other Mystic AoE damage dealers currently in the game, but there really aren't that many AoE Mystic characters, period. And if you like her playstyle and need a good AoE damage dealer, she is very defensible for clearing mobs in a variety of game missions. Cycling Shiroko's Recollection Library is unlocked at Friendship level 3, and she is a permanent character obtainable from gacha rolls on any banner. Gehenna Academy might be one of the oldest and largest schools in all of Kivotos, but it's better known for its infamous troublemakers, who are only kept in check by the district's formidable prefect team. However, when the prefect team is occupied elsewhere, Gehenna's most notable outlaws have been known to leave the school grounds entirely, causing mayhem around Kivotos as they move from one district to the next. Wanibuchi Akari is a member of one such mischievous group, the Gourmet Research Society, a group that seeks to taste the best cuisines, even if it means breaking laws all across Kivotos to do so. Even amongst the Gourmet Research Society, Akari is well known for her incredible eating capacity, to the point that she is a long-standing champion of the Kivotos eating competition. When the Gourmet Research Society isn't on the hunt for their next meal, Akari spends her time cleaning out the entire menu of any restaurant that is unlucky enough to draw her attention. Akari is well accustomed to firefights in her efforts to get her next enormous meal, and her gameplay reflects this. Her EX skill shoots a projectile into her opponents, causing an AoE explosion around the impact site. Her passive skills increase her max HP, and she has 2 separate passives that grant a 10% chance to increase her damage output during auto attacks. As an AoE damage dealer, Akari is well equipped to assist in mission clearing. She shines the brightest when enemies are tightly packed together for firing drills, where her EX skill can wipe out mobs very effectively. I've been a big fan of her increased survivability as well due to her increased HP, which is a very flavorful passive for her in-game persona. Akari's main weakness is that the radius of her AoE damage is relatively small. Unless enemies are tightly clustered together, I've found that I'm only able to reliably hit maybe 2 enemies, as its circular range just isn't big enough to hit more than that. This is much less of a problem when enemies are tightly packed together, but do keep this in mind if you run her for mission clearing. Additionally, between her 2 very similar attack passives, I found that only one of them ever seems to go off during a battle, which makes me wish she didn't have the same ability twice. I would have liked to see something else to maybe boost her crit rate or crit damage, but alas, we're stuck with what we've got. All this being said, Akari is a very defensible, explosive character, both for mission clearing and firing drills, and as a 2-star character, she's very easy to obtain and to level up. Akari's Recollection Library unlocks at Friendship level 5, and she is a permanent character obtainable by making gacha rolls. As the senior administrator of Gehenna's prefect team, Amao Ako is tasked with gathering intel and tracking down Gehenna's many mischievous students. Despite how overworked she is, Ako is fiendishly devoted to her position and will do everything in her power to ensure that Prefect President Hina is well equipped to take out any troublemakers. Ako might be the second in command of Gehenna's militia, but she is considered to be a powerful force on the Kivotos political stage, particularly in regards to military intelligence and data gathering. Ako uses her tactical knowledge to the fullest in her gameplay, where her EX skill substantially increases the crit rate and crit damage of a selected ally for 16 seconds. Her passive skills increase the crit damage for every ally in the party, and every 45 seconds, she recovers HP for an ally on the field. All of this combines together to make Ako an incredible single-target buff character. She pushes powerful characters to become ludicrously strong, and with her EX skill only costing 3 to cast, it is very easy to chain her EX skill into an ally's EX skill over and over again. Her healing capability makes her quite versatile as well, allowing her to keep a damaged ally up and moving. And her other passive makes everyone on your team hit considerably harder when they do crit. She can even buff vehicle characters if they're currently on the field, which is extremely helpful for boosting their damage even further. Ako's main weaknesses are some of the technical aspects of her gameplay. Her EX skill requires you to highlight which character you want to apply the buff to, but the UI doesn't always make it easy to tell which character you're highlighting, as they'll only glow a slightly brighter white compared to the other characters. This effect gets even worse when characters are clustered together, which happens a surprising amount of time during the course of a fight. It requires a bit of practice to get used to, so if it's your first time playing a character like this, don't worry if it takes a few tries to get accustomed to this very wonky visual design. Ako's healing capabilities are also a little tricky to use for regular mission clearing, as 45 seconds is a long time to go between heals, particularly if she is the only character providing healing support. For regular mission clearing, I often find myself pairing her with another healer, whereas this matters a little less for total assault and firing drills. My ultimate thoughts on Akko is that she is incredible for clearing content in this game, especially Total Assault. But she does require some training to use properly, and it's not ideal to use her as your only healer if you're going to use her in missions. If you do happen to roll her, she is fantastic for beefing up your on-field damage, and is well worth the investment into her skills. Akko's Recollection Library unlocks at Friendship level 5, and she is a permanent character obtainable from making gacha rolls. The Gourmet Research Society may be a notorious organization within Gehenna, but Problem Solver 68 has such a high bounty on their heads that they have fled the district entirely. The group of outlaws are led by none other than Riku Hachima Aru, whose great aspirations are dwarfed by her even worse luck. She has mastered the art of deception just enough to gain the aid of powerful patrons, but actually executing those patrons' demands is quite a different story. And more times than not, she and Problem Solver 68 are on the run again from their many, many pursuers. Aru might bumble a bit with completing her jobs, but her self-confident swagger is not entirely for show. She is an excellent shot with her sniper rifle, and she utilizes this in her EX skill to deal a high-powered shot to a single target. Once the EX skill has struck that enemy, it will pulse for a few moments before exploding in a large AoE of damage. Her passive skills increase her overall crit damage, as well as her crit rate when using her EX skill. And every 25 seconds, she will shoot a high-powered shot at one enemy, which has a 50% chance of setting off an AoE explosion. Aru is one of the few characters who has unique equipment, which substantially increases her accuracy at Friendship level 20. And at Friendship level 25, her passive skill has a 100% chance, instead of a 50% chance, to deal an AoE explosion every 25 seconds. As an explosive damage dealer, Aru's versatility is astounding. The AoE on her EX skill is large enough to hit several clustered enemies at once, and with her high crit rate and crit damage, it also makes her a great single target damage dealer. She is a lot of fun for mission clearing, as well as bounties and Total Assault, where her damage dealing capabilities are fantastic for a wide variety of bosses. Deciding where to place her EX skill can take a little bit of practice. If several enemies are clumped together, it can be easy to accidentally select one on the outside edge of the group, causing the subsequent AoE damage to miss potential targets. Hilariously enough, I've actually found Aru's crazy damage to be a downside sometimes for missions, as her first shot will often immediately knock out the selected enemy, and by the time the explosion goes off, the other enemies have already advanced out of the blast radius. My best strategy for offsetting this is just making sure to only target stationary enemies, as that way, if one of them goes down, the surrounding enemies will still be hit by the AoE explosion. Although her EX skill takes a little bit of practice to get just right, I've thoroughly enjoyed Aru for a huge variety of content. And if you happen to pull her from your rolls, she doesn't take too much investment to start hitting extremely hard in combat. Aru's Recollection Library unlocks at Friendship level 6, and she is a permanent character obtainable by making gacha rolls or by grinding Hard Mission 18-3. While Aru's bad luck follows her around at all times, she tries to overcome this by welcoming in the new year with an extra bit of flair. In New Year, Aru is dressed for the job she wishes she had, and she tries to summon up whatever small luck she still has left to bring in better business for Problem Solver 68. New Year Aru's clumsy but earnest demeanor transfers to her gameplay, where her EX skill shoots a firework into a single enemy, which will bounce into nearby enemies up to 11 times. If she has accumulated any evil deeds, which we will get to in a moment, she will recover some of her EX casting cost, and all evil deed stacks will reset. Her passive skills increase her max HP, and every 30 seconds, she will shoot an AoE firework with a smaller radius at a group of opponents. Her final passive concerns those evil deed stacks, so bear with me as I walk through this. For every 6 enemies that New Year Aru defeats, she will gain 1 evil deed, which pretty substantially decreases her defense. The trade-off is that every time you activate her EX skill, all evil deeds are removed, and you will regain half of an EX cost per evil deed, making her EX skill more affordable as a result. In essence, it's a complicated way to say that New Year Aru's defense will get worse the more enemies she defeats, but every time her EX skill is activated, this defense debuff is removed, and a portion of her EX skill cost is refunded. When everything is said and done, New Year Aru can be really fun for clearing mission content, as well as firing drills, and she excels in Total Assault Chesed, where her EX skill can bounce through an entire mob of enemies to wipe them out. The slight cost regeneration of her abilities also makes it easier to recast her EX skill, which is a small blessing, given that it costs 6 to cast. That being said, there are definitely some things to keep in mind with New Year Aru's gameplay. You should always be targeting enemies at the very edge of a mob, as that will help to maximize how many enemies the firework can bounce through. It's also important to learn the timing of this, because her ability to chew through mobs is very dependent on how close together the enemies are, as the fireworks won't jump from one enemy to the next if the enemies are too far apart from each other. The practical issue with this is that if New Year Aru targets a mob, and some of the enemies go down before her firework reaches them, her attack chain will be disrupted before finishing everyone off. Learning how to carefully time her EX skill and making sure to target the enemies at the edge of a mob can take a little bit of practice as a result. In addition, she really benefits from investment in that evil deed passive, as the defense debuff is pretty substantial at lower levels, but it gets a lot more manageable the more resources you put into it. All of this makes New Year Aru a bit of a high-risk, high-reward character, but if you've seen any of my other Blue Archive videos, you'll know I'm pretty obsessed with her. And so if you also like the look of her gameplay, make sure to snag her when her limited banner comes around again. And when you do, I would highly suggest getting some practice in with that EX skill just to get that timing right for her fireworks. New Year Aru's Recollection Library unlocks at Friendship level 5, and she is a limited character who is only available during the New Year's Rhapsody number 68 event. Once a member of Gehenna's Emergency Medical Club, Kinomiya Chinatsu now serves as the Chief Medical Officer within the Prefect team. She is one of the very first characters who Sensei meets within Kivotos, and although she is frequently overworked within the Prefect team, she always tries her best to de-escalate violence and maintain important alliances with Shale. As an off-field healer, Chinatsu's medical expertise is evident in her gameplay, where her EX skill recovers a large amount of health for one ally on the field. At EX levels 3 and above, this will also remove a status ailment or debuff from the selected ally. Her passive increases her own healing, as well as the overall defense of allies, and every 40 seconds, she increases the evasion of the ally with the lowest HP. Chinatsu's healing is substantial enough to keep allies up and moving during a mission, and her passive skills make it more difficult for enemies to knock out any allies who are the most injured. In addition, she's one of the few characters who can remove status ailments and debuffs with her healing, which can be very helpful in Total Assault Perorodzilla if you don't have anyone else who can deal with the boss's debuff. Even in the late game, she can be a great asset for healing-based firing drills, as her single target healing is substantial enough to make it through those challenges. However, she is slightly outclassed by several other 1- and 2-star healers in most applications, and in the later game, I've found myself only really using her for firing drills. That being said, if you do want to run her into the late game, she can still be an excellent single-target healer, especially for healing-based challenges. Chinatsu's Recollection Library unlocks at Friendship level 6, and in addition to being available to anyone starting out the game, her Elephs are also obtainable from gacha rolls, the Total Assault shop, and Gehenna-themed events. While Chinatsu's regular form emphasizes her tireless dedication to the prefect team, her alternate form finally gives her the chance to relax from her busy activities. Hot Springs Chinatsu enjoys the many amenities and massage chairs at the onsen before heading back to the prefect team grind. Instead of focusing on healing, Hot Springs Chinatsu is an on-field support character whose EX skill massively increases the attack speed for a chosen ally. Whenever she activates her EX skill, she will gain a small shield to protect herself from incoming attacks. Her other passive skills increase her max HP, and every 25 seconds, she will increase the attack speed of a random ally. Hot Springs Chinatsu is more of a niche character, but she fills that niche well. Her ability to increase attack speed is tremendously useful for firing drills and Total Assault, where her EX skill can substantially increase the damage output of whatever character you select, especially any characters that are quite good auto attackers. Hot Springs Chinatsu is technically a mystic damage dealer, but she is a support character above all else, so running her for piercing Total Assaults is still completely viable as a result. On a practical level, Hot Springs Chinatsu has the same UI problem as Akko, where it can be difficult to see which character is being selected when you are trying to use her EX skill, especially when characters are clustered together. The more you practice with this, the easier it gets to use, but it's still something to note if Hot Springs Chinatsu is your first character with this kind of obnoxious UI problem. In addition, I've found Hot Springs Chinatsu to have a little less utility for regular mission clearing, as I often just want another damage dealer or support to get through the stage faster. But if you enjoy auto attackers and cranking up their attack speed, she is a ton of fun for zooming through content clearing. Hot Springs Chinatsu unlocks her Recollection Library at Friendship level 6, and she is a permanent character obtainable from making gacha rolls. Not all of Gehenna's students are constant troublemakers, or at least not intentionally. And no one exemplifies this better than Aikyo Fuuka. As a member of Gehenna's school lunch club, Fuuka is renowned for her cooking abilities, and she is one of the only things keeping Gehenna's student body well fed. When she is not finding new recipes to serve in the cafeteria, she is desperately trying to escape from the Gourmet Research Society, who are always kidnapping her to prepare their high-end cuisines. Fuuka's excellent cooking makes a full appearance in her gameplay, where her EX skill drops a gigantic pot onto the battlefield, prompting allies to move towards it to regain lost health. Her passive skills increase her healing capabilities, as well as the crit resistance of all allies, and every 20 seconds, she increases the defense of the ally with the highest HP. As an AoE healer, Fuuka does a great job of quickly healing allies, and she has a very low chance of whiffing this heal due to her EX skill prompting allies to run up and regain health from the pot, even when they're advancing through a stage. Her passive is also great at buffing the defense of your on-field tank, who can take more damage while you clear missions. I absolutely love Fuuka as a character, but I have to admit that for overall usability, she's a little outclassed by some other 1- and 2-star healers in the game. Her AoE heal is very reliable, but it does cost 5 to cast. And when her healing scaling is comparable to other AoE healers with lower costs for their EX skills, it's sometimes hard to justify running her for missions if you have a better healer. That being said, if you do like her, she is still very viable for mission clearing, and her ability to reposition allies can be useful for niche applications, such as Total Assault Shirokuro, although that does require a bit of knowledge about boss attack patterns, and isn't necessarily something I'd recommend if you have other characters to fit this role. Ultimately, if you do still want to run Fuuka, she is perfectly viable for mission clearing, but just be prepared for her EX skill to cost a little extra to cast, and put some resources into her healing to really make it worthwhile whenever she does cast her EX skill. Fuuka's Recollection Library unlocks at Friendship level 6, and she is a permanent character obtainable from making gacha rolls, as well as the Tactical Challenge Shop, or from Gehenna-themed events. Igusa Haruka might not have the confidence of her leader Aru, but she will follow Problem Solver 68 anywhere and will do anything to prove her worth as a valuable outlaw. Plagued with abysmally low self-confidence, Haruka has a bad tendency of seeing herself as expendable and charges headfirst into battles as a result. Whenever she isn't running away from the prefect team or local authorities, Haruka enjoys growing wild grasses, which she finds kinship with as organisms that are often disregarded or trodden upon by others. Haruka's anxiety and impulsiveness lends itself well to her abilities, as she springs into battle headfirst with her EX skill spraying multiple shotgun blasts into opponents. Her passive skills increase her own max HP, with her defense substantially increasing every 20 seconds. And she has a 5% chance to increase her own defense whenever she takes damage. When it comes to mission clearing, Haruka is a very reasonable tank for dealing AoE damage, as well as taking the brunt of enemy attacks. She can take quite a beating from enemies and still remain standing due to her HP and defense passive skills, and her EX skill cost of 4 is very repeatable throughout the course of a battle. I've seen some folks use her for Total Assault, particularly Total Assault Kaiten, as her wide AoE and defensive stats pair nicely against the sturdy Kaitingers. Haruka's final passive is a little underwhelming on paper, but I've found it will activate pretty reliably during the course of a battle, making her an even sturdier tank with extra defense. As a tank, Haruka does have quite low base attack, so investing in her equipment is worthwhile to get her damage output to be a little higher. Thankfully, the damage scaling on her EX skill is high enough to largely make up for this, but it is worth noting if you do want to run her for content clearing. Overall, despite starting as a 1-star character, Haruka is very playable for mob-based missions. So if you enjoy her character and her gameplay, then she's worth the investment as an explosive tank, especially with how easy she is to obtain and level up in the game. Haruka's Recollection Library unlocks at Friendship level 8, and she is a permanent character obtainable by making gacha rolls or from any Gehenna-themed events. Even amongst the eccentric members of the Gourmet Research Society, none are more notorious than the club's president, Kurodate Haruna. She is the glue that holds the Gourmet Research Society together, and the catalyst for their many explosive escapades in search of fine cuisine. Haruna's tastes are not limited to high-class eating, as she loves any and all food culture, including her favorite taiyaki street food. Haruna's notoriety isn't just for show. She is a powerful mystic damage dealer, whose EX skill deals a gigantic line of damage in a straight line from her location. Her passive skills increase her attack if she's standing still, as well as her overall max HP, and she will deal an additional chunk of damage to an opponent every 30 seconds. Haruna is a powerhouse of a character with a lot of versatility. Her EX skill can hit multiple enemies at once as it streaks across the stage, and if her EX skill is maxed out to 5, the cost is reduced from 4 to 3, which is an absurd upgrade given how affordable her EX skill was originally. However, she doesn't need to be maxed out to reach her full potential, which is a huge boon for players who don't have the resources to fully invest in her. Haruna's attack passive reads that she must be standing still to gain an attack increase, but she always stands still when she shoots. So this is effectively a massive attack buff to all her shots. All of this combined together makes Haruna an amazingly fun character to run for missions, as well as commissions, firing drills, and total assaults, as she hits hard and fast over and over again. The one weakness of Haruna's gameplay is that her EX skill takes a few moments to wind up, which means that it does have the potential to miss if the target moves. This is less of a concern for regular missions, where you can simply wait until all enemies are stationary before starting to fire, but it's a much bigger consideration when fighting in total assault, as enemies can and do move very frequently during mystic fights. As a result, she requires careful execution and knowledge of boss movement patterns to properly utilize, which is something to keep in mind when running her for total assault. Despite this consideration, I've found Haruna to be an incredibly fun character in a huge variety of game modes. And if you like her playstyle and her ability to blast through enemies, she is well worth the time and effort to level up for your teams. Haruna's Recollection Library unlocks at Friendship level 6, and she is a permanent character obtainable by making gacha rolls or by grinding hard missions 8-3 and hard mission 12-3. At the head of Gehenna's prefect team is one of the most feared students in Kivotos, Sorasaki Hina. Commonly referred to as a one-woman army, she comprises most of the prefect team's firepower entirely on her own. But this also leads her to shoulder more responsibility than she can often bear. Finding a better work-life balance is Hina's primary goal, but that is often pushed to the sidelines as she fights to maintain order within and outside of Gehenna's borders. Hina's combat prowess is formidable to behold. Her EX skill costs a whopping 7 to cast, but it sprays a torrent of machine gun fire to level anything in her path. Her passive skills increase her attack speed, as well as her damage output against enemies not utilizing cover. And anytime she needs to reload her weapon, she does so instantly and increases her attack for 16 seconds. Although her EX skill costs a lot to cast, it can unleash devastation upon the battlefield. With a huge AoE, she can mow down anything in her path, including obstacles, which then exposes enemies for her passive to deal extra damage against. With a very fast attack speed, Hina is also very reasonable as just an auto attacker, meaning that you don't always have to cast her EX skill for her to chew through enemies, whether that's for missions, firing drills, bounties, and even total assault. However, if you do cast her EX skill, it is quite expensive, meaning that she requires careful planning and patience in order to effectively play. Certain characters in the game can reduce the cost of EX skills, and pairing those characters with Hina makes it much more reasonable to cast her EX skill. If you do run her as just an auto attacker, just be prepared that her EX skill might be dead weight in your skill bar as you cycle through other characters, but with how reasonable her auto attack damage is, this is often not the biggest concern. All that being said, I've had a bunch of fun using Hina for mission clearing, and if you roll into her and feel like you can patiently wait to lay waste to your enemies, or you just want to use her as an auto attacker, she is a blast for knocking out waves of opponents throughout various mission stages. Hina's Recollection Library unlocks at Friendship level 8, and she is a permanent character obtainable from gacha rolls or by grinding hard mission 16-3. Although Hina struggles to maintain a good work-life balance, her alternate form allows her to take a short breather from the prefect team, at least for just a little while. Swimsuit Hina is able to step away from some of her responsibilities, although her trusted machine gun remains by her side, just in case chaos decides to break loose again. Her EX skill can target up to 5 enemies in a wide arc, dealing repeated machine gun fire to each targeted opponent. Her passive skills increase her crit rate, as well as her attack power while casting her EX skill. And every 20 seconds, she chucks an inner tube at an opponent to stun and damage them simultaneously. Swimsuit Hina's EX skill might sound restrictive on paper, but in practice, it's quite effective at clearing out mobs during missions, as well as bounties and firing drills. And it is perfectly tailored for the first half of Total Assault Kaiten. Her passive inner tube attack is very reliable at stunning the most annoying of the Kitingers during this fight, which helps to reduce the number of taunts that will occur as a result. With Swimsuit Hina's EX skill only costing 3, it's very spammable against mobs for a variety of different game modes. Unlike her AoE damage, however, Swimsuit Hina's single target damage isn't quite as impressive. If she only has one target to focus on, she will send attacks at just that target, but it will not stack any additional damage just for being one target, which means she's effectively doing 1/5 of the damage she could potentially be doing. It feels like a massive oversight, especially when other flexible attackers can do this. While this isn't as big of an issue for mission clearing, it's a lot more relevant for fighting bosses, as she will not be able to deal a huge amount of damage to one sturdy target. It's a shame, because she is really tailor-built to deal with the mobs in the first half of Total Assault Kaiten, but she is much less equipped to contribute damage during the second half. Despite her lackluster single target damage, I've still found Swimsuit Hina to be a ton of fun to play, and if you're okay with using her as an AoE attacker, she is worthwhile to pull whenever her limited banner circles around again. Swimsuit Hina's Recollection Library unlocks at Friendship level 5, and she is a limited character who is only available during the Prefect Team Vacation event. Although Hina is a tremendous force within the Prefect team, she is supported by the military might of Shiromi Iori, one of the highest-ranking officers within Gehenna's militia. Blunt and short-tempered, Iori struggles to take orders from anyone besides Hina and Akko, and will unleash hellfire on anyone who gets on the Prefect team's bad side. Despite her ill temper, Iori has quite the rabid fan base, and pictures of her run for a considerable sum amongst the Gehenna student body. Iori's fans are well informed about her military prowess. Iori's EX skill fires 3 high-powered shotgun blasts into her opponents, either hitting a single target multiple times, or several different targets with each shot. Her passive skills increase her accuracy and allow her to deal extra damage when she's out of cover, which powers up her EX skill shots considerably. In addition, she deals an extra shotgun blast to an opponent every 25 seconds. All of this combines with Iori's high base attack to make her a content-clearing powerhouse. Every shotgun blast from her EX skill will deal AoE splash damage in a huge cone behind the struck enemy, which effectively allows Iori to chew through multiple enemies at once with every shotgun blast. With her EX skill only costing 3, this can be very spammable to get through missions, commissions, and total assault bosses, even in terrain that she doesn't prefer. She is a tremendously powerful damage dealer who can clear mobs or bosses in a variety of different game modes. That being said, her EX skill does have some considerable range limits to take note of. Part of her EX animation moves Iori backwards and sideways across the stage, which is very fun to watch, but it can bring her out of range if you target an enemy at the edge of her EX skill radius. As a result, Iori benefits from being relatively close to her targets before activating her EX skill, just to make sure that all of her shots actually connect. This is less of a concern for total assault fights, since Iori is always close enough to make full use of her shotgun blasts, but it's something to keep in mind for mission clearing and firing drills. Iori is a very powerful damage dealer who is quite fun for clearing a variety of different game modes, so if you do happen to roll her, I think she's well worth the investment to shotgun her way through a bunch of the game. Iori's Recollection Library is unlocked at Friendship level 6, and she is a permanent character obtainable by making gacha rolls or by grinding hard mission 14-3. Following the lead of her trusted prefect team leader, Iori only takes a breather when Hina does, and so she only sheds her prefect team uniform when it's time to hit the beach. In addition to AoE damage, Swimsuit Iori also specializes in damage over time. Her EX skill launches an AoE attack on her opponents, whereas her passive skills increase her overall attack, while granting her a 25% chance to inflict chill damage during her attacks. Every 25 seconds, she will strike a single enemy and deal guaranteed chill damage to that opponent. Although Swimsuit Iori is very good at blasting through clustered mobs of characters, she has a fast enough attack speed to make her a very defensible auto-attacker. This is particularly true when combined with her frequent chill applications, which synergizes very well with characters who benefit from status ailments and debuffs. Swimsuit Iori can be a very reasonable damage dealer for missions, but she really excels in firing drills and even total assault, particularly when combined with other high-powered damage dealers. However, Swimsuit Iori's EX skill has the same radius problem as Akari's AoE skill, meaning that if enemies aren't clustered tightly together, it can be difficult to hit more than 2 opponents with a single shot. This is much less of a concern for firing drills, but it is something to keep in mind if you want to use her for regular mission clearing. That being said, if you enjoy her gameplay and her synergy with other high-powered damage dealers, then Swimsuit Iori can be a very fun character to pull for when her limited banner rolls around again. Swimsuit Iori's Recollection Library unlocks at Friendship level 5, and she is a limited character who is only available during the Prefect Team Vacation event. Although the Prefect Team receives the most fearful respect from Gehenna's student body, they do not actually control the Student Council of Gehenna. That title resides with the Pandemonium Society, the haphazard group of students who largely rule Gehenna in name only. The person primarily responsible for granting the Pandemonium Society any legitimacy is Secretary Natsume Iroha, who diligently maintains whatever records and political relations she can with the greater powers of Kibotos. Iroha is quick to settle disputes as well, riding her trusted tank Toramaru into battle whenever she is summoned. As a vehicle unit, Iroha's EX skill brings her and Toramaru onto the battlefield for 55 seconds, shooting powerful artillery shells that will target one enemy before splintering off into every nearby opponent, making it effectively an AoE shot. Her passive skills buff her attack, as well as the attack of all allies, and every 40 seconds, she fires 4 high-powered artillery shells that will strike up to 4 targets. To be frank, Iroha is absurdly powerful. Iroha will not only remain on the field for a whopping 55 seconds, but her damage output is very good. She's one of the few special units that can easily outdamage on-field attackers, and that is after she has buffed their attack with her passive. Iroha is very effective at clearing mobs and bosses in missions, as well as total assault and so many other game modes. And she can even deal damage from the backline with just her passive skill. The primary drawback with Iroha is that she is very expensive to build. At base level, her EX skill costs 8 to cast, which is an absurdly high number. This is reduced to a cost of 6 when her EX is at max level, and even that cost of 6 is quite an intimidating prospect. If you want to fully utilize Iroha, you will want to max her EX skill, as well as heavily invest in her equipment, which can get very expensive very quickly. That being said, if you happen to roll Iroha, she is an unbelievably powerful unit and very fun to play for a huge portion of the game, but do be prepared to invest heavily in her skills and equipment to get her to a much more playable level. Iroha's Recollection Library unlocks at Friendship level 6, and she is a permanent character obtainable by making gacha rolls on any banner. Even amongst the members of the Gourmet Research Society, Shishido Izumi is known for her eccentric eating preferences. Izumi's specialty lies in eating anything and everything, and she has a tendency to create unthinkable recipes. Her sturdy stomach can tolerate any seemingly absurd combination of ingredients, leading to her seeking out more outlandish recipes with every meal. Izumi's sturdy demeanor makes a full appearance in her gameplay, where her EX skill recovers a large amount of her HP. Her passive skills increase her self-healing capabilities, as well as increasing her damage dealt proportional to her HP. And she has a 20% chance to deal an extra blast of damage during her auto attacks. As an auto attack based character, Izumi's impact on the course of battle won't be the most immediately apparent, but her sturdiness and self-healing abilities grant her relative stability for mission clearing. This sturdiness has allowed her to see play as a DPS for Total Assault Kaiten, but this does require some heavy investment in her equipment and skills, as her base attack is quite low otherwise. Truthfully, Izumi is a bit of a bizarre character to play. Her high HP and self-healing is almost tank-like, but she is positioned near the back of the striker team, which means that she won't be tanking any blows for your team. She is outclassed by a lot of other damage dealers in the game, but if you do like her playstyle and her self-healing capabilities, she can be a very sturdy addition to a lot of your teams. Izumi's Recollection Library unlocks at Friendship level 5, and she is a permanent character obtainable through gacha rolls or by grinding Hard Mission 13-3. While Izumi's regular form focuses on her iron stomach, her alternate form is charged up on barely palatable summer drinks while she is on vacation. Swimsuit Izumi's EX skill lobs a coconut at an opponent, dealing stun damage before ricocheting off into nearby enemies up to 5 times. Her passive skill increases her attack speed, as well as her attack power every 35 seconds. And she has an additional 10% chance to deal stun damage with her auto attacks. As an AoE damage dealer, Swimsuit Izumi does have some pretty decent utility, as her coconut attack can bounce through enemies that are surprisingly far apart from each other. Her added ability to stun enemies is quite useful for mission clearing as well as firing drills, and if you don't have anyone else to deal with the Kitinger taunts, it can be helpful for Total Assault Kaiten as well. That being said, Swimsuit Izumi's base attack isn't quite high enough to rival a lot of her peers, and so she is certainly replaceable if you do find other characters you would rather be running. But for a free event student, she is very defensible for content clearing and for mob-based firing drills. Swimsuit Izumi's Recollection Library unlocks at Friendship level 5, and she can be unlocked from the Prefect Team Vacation event. The final member of the Gourmet Research Society, Akashi Junko, might be the most practically minded of the group, but that doesn't stop her from joining her comrades in their wild culinary escapades. Junko's quest for tasty street food ends in failure more often than not, but her defeats have only made her stronger, and the more she is worn down, the more ferocious a fighter she becomes. Junko's strength from suffering makes a full appearance in her gameplay, as her EX skill deals a huge amount of damage to enemies in a straight line from her, but at the cost of 25% of Junko's current HP. However, the less HP that Junko has, the more powerful she becomes, as her passives increase damage dealt to enemies proportional to her lost HP. Her other passive skills increase her evasion, and once per battle, if her HP falls below 20%, she will become invincible for at least 12 seconds. All of this makes Junko a fascinating character to play, as she is one of the few characters who I don't worry about rapidly healing, as her attacks only get stronger the less health she has. It leads to a very unique play pattern that can be very powerful for missions, as well as commissions, firing drills, and even Total Assault Chess Ed. And although it takes a little time to adjust to her playstyle, it can be very rewarding to watch her mow down enemies. That being said, her playstyle is definitely not for everyone. Although Junko can become invincible once per battle, it's generally a bad sign if her health falls below 20%, and so she'll still want some healing or shields to make sure she can continue attacking. On the flip side, she is a character who does not benefit from passive healing, as she will frequently be the character with the lowest life who you don't want to recover lost HP. If you do enjoy the challenge of balancing her life total and healing, she can be a very powerful character for clearing a bunch of different stages, but do be prepared for a slight learning curve when you first pick her up. Junko's Recollection Library unlocks at Friendship level 8, and she is a permanent character obtainable by making gacha rolls on any banner. Within the Gehenna school cafeteria, there is said to lurk a cooking monster. Everything she touches will become unpalatable, and students are frequently taken to the emergency medical club if they are unlucky enough to try her meals. The unfortunate culprit for these rumors is Ushimaki Juri, the enthusiastic but unspeakably horrible chef for the school lunch club. Despite Fuuka's best efforts, Juri's cooking continues to poison anyone who eats it. And whenever Fuuka is indisposed by the Gourmet Research Society, Juri's cooking is all that Gehenna has left. The poisonous dishes of Juri make a full appearance in her gameplay. Her EX skill drops a questionable vat of food onto the battlefield, drawing nearby enemies towards it and dealing gradual poison damage to any opponents unlucky enough to consume it. Her passive skills increase the max HP of all allies, as well as her own attack, while also decreasing the attack speed of the most powerful enemy every 20 seconds. In theory, Juri's skills look really interesting. Her passive skill that buffs HP is the same as Ayane's, which I've praised for increasing survivability of your team, and her EX skill, drawing in nearby enemies to do damage over time, should be a great ability, especially for only costing 3. However, the truth of the matter is that the AoE range on Juri's EX skill is weirdly small, meaning that it's very easy for an enemy to completely miss the poisonous pot and never receive that poison damage. And even if the enemies do get poisoned, the damage is very minor, as Juri's base attack and damage scaling are quite low. It's such a bummer, because this ability is so flavorful, no pun intended, but I'm not sure that I can advocate running Juri, even with considerable investment in her skills and accounting for her small AoE. That being said, if you do like underdogs and you still want to play her, my best advice is to wait for enemies to stop moving before activating her EX skill, and try to place the pot as close to enemies as possible to encourage them to grab the poison. It's the best shot you'll have of maximizing her damage potential. At the time of writing, Juri is the only character without a recollection library, but based on the release dates from the Japanese server, Juri should get her recollection library during the New Year event featuring the Gourmet Research Society, and it should unlock at Friendship level 6. Juri is a permanent character, obtainable by making gacha rolls on any banner, or through Gehenna-themed events. Although Aru prides herself on being the boss of Problem Solver 68, the true brains of the operation is Onikata Kayoko. Quiet and intimidating, Kayoko is feared for her menacing demeanor. But in reality, she is tremendously compassionate and has quite a soft spot for cats of all kinds. Whenever Problem Solver 68 finds a place to hunker down, Kayoko will quickly make friends with all the neighboring cats as she showers them with love and large amounts of food. All the same, Kayoko does make use of her intimidating visage in her gameplay, where her EX skill activates a gigantic AoE that will damage all enemies around her while inflicting them with fear. Her passive skills increase the effectiveness of her fear application, while increasing her damage output to enemies inflicted with fear. And every 20 seconds, she will land a gunshot on an enemy with a 30% chance to also apply fear. This ability to inflict fear is a very rare status effect in Blue Archive, and Kayoko is able to very reliably activate this effect with her EX skill. The huge radius of her ability is big enough to hit most of the visible field, which is great for regular missions. But I've had the most fun using it during firing drills, where the ludicrously large AoE can hit a huge number of robots on the stage. However, Kayoko's massive AoE does come at a steep cost. Her EX skill costs 6 to cast, And with a very low base attack, the actual damage inflicted by her EX skill is considerably reduced unless you invest in it. As a result, Kayoko does benefit from pretty considerable resource investment in her skills and her equipment to deal more reasonable damage. But if you do like her fear application and her huge AoE, it can be worthwhile to run her for mob clearing missions. Just to be prepared to run her with an EX cost reducer, or to patiently wait for her EX skill to become available. Kayoko's Recollection Library unlocks at Friendship level 6, and she is a permanent character obtainable by making gacha rolls on any banner or through Gehenna-themed events. The final member of Problem Solver 68 is the most mischievous of them all, Asagi Mutsuki, the imp-like girl who loves nothing more than a good laugh and an even bigger explosion. When she's not causing mayhem throughout Kivotos, Mutsuki loves to tease Aru and the fellow members of Problem Solver 68, who she has become rather fond of during their many months on the run from Gehenna. Although she is frequently aloof, Mutsuki is fiercely loyal to anyone she deems a friend, and she will unleash hell itself if anyone threatens those she cares about. As an explosives expert, Mutsuki specializes in setting bombs and blowing her opponents away. Her EX skill throws an AoE of 3 high-powered explosives at her opponents, which detonate after a short wind-up. Every 20 seconds, Mutsuki will fire a smaller set of mines, which will either detonate on contact, or will set off automatically after 15 seconds. Her passives increase her attack, and grant her an additional 20% chance to increase her auto-attack accuracy. As an AoE damage dealer, Mutsuki is very effective at clearing large swaths of enemies. The explosion radius from her bombs overlap very nicely with each other, making it very effective at wiping out large groups of enemies, even if they aren't clustered together. Her bombs are even powerful enough to deal considerable damage to total assault bosses, particularly Kaiten, and she is invaluable for clearing bounties and firing drills with explosive mobs. One note I will make is that Mutsuki's EX skill does have a short wind-up animation, both when she throws the bombs and when they explode in sequence, so make sure that the enemies have stopped moving before throwing this attack out. I've generally found Mutsuki's passive mines to be a little less reliable, as they're often tossed relatively close to Mutsuki and are unlikely to detonate until most mobs have dropped. But her EX skill is powerful enough to make up for this completely. Her base attack is relatively low at the start, but the damage scaling and attack boosting passives easily make up for this, so she doesn't require quite as heavy investment as other characters to become quickly relevant. Overall, Mutsuki is a ton of fun to play, and if you happen to roll her, she is well worth building for a huge variety of game modes. Mutsuki's Recollection Library unlocks at Friendship level 6, and she is a permanent character obtainable by making gacha rolls or through Gehenna-themed events. When Problem Solver 68 sets out to welcome in the new year, Mutsuki is not far behind, and she already has a series of new explosives ready to test out. Whereas Mutsuki's regular form specializes in conventional explosives, New Year Mutsuki has repurposed fireworks for more devilish purposes. With her new explosives in hand, New Year Mutsuki's EX skill shoots fireworks that explode in a gigantic fan-shaped area, covering the back of the field. Her passive skills increase her attack, and every 50 seconds, she will spray a large firework attack in a straight line from her position. For every 3 enemies injured by her EX skill, New Year Mutsuki accumulates 1 imp stack. And if she obtains 6, that passive attack that shoots a firework will become tremendously more damaging when it is unleashed. There are a lot of characters that I adore playing in this game, so I don't say this lightly when I say that New Year Mutsuki is some of the most sheer hilarious fun I've had playing a character. Her EX skill is not only flashy, but it deals a huge amount of damage to a wide swath of enemies, and at a cost of only 2, it is incredibly spammable during a fight. New Year Mutsuki is a blast for clearing missions, firing drills, and mowing down Pororos in Total Assault Pororodzilla. That being said, New Year Mutsuki's attack range does require some getting used to. Her EX skill covers the back half of the stage, which can sometimes mean the enemies are slightly too close to her to be hit with that skill. As a result, she's one of the few characters that's better at hitting enemies before they get too close to her, which often looks like launching her attack while enemies are still moving. In particular, I would suggest using her EX skill as soon as enemies come into range, as the fireworks have a slight wind-up animation and can better hit opponents this way. This is the same advice I have for Pororodzilla, as New Year Mutsuki can actually get into weird attack ranges if you let her get too close to the derpy mascots before firing her skill. Despite these caveats, I've found New Year Mutsuki to be a blast to play. Her EX skill is very easy to cast, has great AoE damage, and is visually fantastic to watch as she mows down mobs of enemies. So if she looks like fun to you as well, I would definitely recommend picking her up when her limited banner rolls around again. New Year Mutsuki unlocks her Recollection Library at Friendship level 5, and she is a limited character who is only available during the New Year's Rhapsody number 68 event. Last but certainly not least is Himuro Sena, the head of Gehenna's Emergency Medical Club. Although Sena is a person of very few words, when she does speak, her eccentricities begin to become apparent, particularly her desire to practice medical techniques on actual cadavers. However, Sena's goal is always to keep students as healthy as possible, and she'll ride directly into the line of fire in her armored ambulance if the need arises. As a vehicle unit, Sena rides directly onto the field whenever her EX skill is activated, remaining there for 50 seconds while she intermittently heals nearby allies and increases their attack power. Her passive skills increase her own healing capabilities, as well as the attack of all allies, and every 40 seconds, she will increase the attack of the most powerful ally on your team. As a support unit, Sena can be a very versatile pick for completing missions. Her intermittent healing is consistent enough to keep allies up and moving, and her attack buff while on the field, as well as through her passive, are great for adding extra damage to your team. Although her EX skill gets discounted to 4 at max level, it's still fairly reasonable to cast it at 5, particularly for how long she stays on the battlefield. The unfortunate drawback of Sena is that, like all vehicle units, she will always stay at the back of your team, which isn't normally a problem for vehicle characters, but in the case of Sena, this means that there is a decent chance that her attack buff and healing won't even reach your on-field allies. Even if it does reach them, it's pretty easy for characters to move out of her healing and attack buff without meaning to do so. And although she tries to keep up with them, her ambulance isn't always the best at navigating through the field. As a result, I've personally found myself running other supports over Sena for most missions, as her awkward positioning can be troublesome at the best of times. But if you do want to use her, the passive attack buff can be very worthwhile all by itself, just for mission clearing. and pairing her with other back position damage dealers can help alleviate the issue of allies moving outside of her AoE. Sena's Recollection Library unlocks at Friendship level 6, and she is a permanent character obtainable by making gacha rolls on any banner. While Gehenna has a reputation for its rambunctious, mischievous students, the neighboring Trinity Academy is known for being wealthy and proper, with its students settling matters by words rather than battles. Rumors, however, are not always to be trusted, as in reality, Trinity has a wide variety of students from all walks of life, and many of them are just as mischievous as their Gehenna counterparts. As a member of the after-school sweets gang, Kurimura Airi loves nothing more than eating ice cream and hanging out with her fellow clubmates. But don't be deceived by her sweet demeanor. In the darkened alleys of Trinity, Airi is also known as one of the 4 divine beasts of the after-school sweets gang, and she'll fight alongside her friends to keep her gang boss safe. Airi's love of ice cream and her membership in the Sweets Gang makes a full appearance in her gameplay, where her EX skill shoots a glob of ice cream onto the field to deal damage as well as slow down enemies. Her passive skill increases her own attack, as well as the attack speed of all allies, and every 30 seconds, she decreases the attack speed of one enemy for 25 seconds. Although Airi can significantly slow down enemies with her ice cream attack, she shines the brightest in joint firing drills, where her passive can help offset any steep debuffs to attack speed of your characters. I really wanted to make Airi work for mission running because the AoE radius on her EX skill is quite large, and slowing down enemies seemed like an interesting way to approach battles. But the cost of 5 for her EX skill is quite steep, and with Airi's own base attack and damage scaling being quite low, it is difficult for me to justify running her personally. That being said, at EX levels 3 and above, she can also reduce enemy attack speed in addition to their run speed, so if you do still want to run her for regular missions, it's definitely a good idea to get her EX skill to at least 3 to increase her overall utility. Airi's Recollection Library unlocks at Friendship level 6, and she is a permanent character obtainable from gacha rolls or during Trinity-themed events. Trinity doesn't get many transfer students, but when they do, they tend to be quite notable, and Shirasu Azusa is no exception. Compared to her Trinity peers, Azusa can come across as blunt and even battle-worn, but she is a tremendously loyal friend and cares deeply about the people in her life. She also has quite the soft spot for the Momo Friends franchise, and becomes absolutely giddy with excitement whenever she sees their plushies. Azusa's EX skill shoots a powerful shot into a single opponent, which tears through them for several seconds. Her passive skills increase her own crit rate, and allows her to deal extra damage to opponents afflicted with status ailments or debuffs, which is excellent because every 30 seconds, Azusa will shoot a single opponent and inflict them with a defense debuff. All of this combines together to make Azusa a powerhouse for taking down sturdy enemies. Her EX skill alone does a huge amount of damage to explosive enemies, but combined with her passives that will debuff that opponent's defenses, as well as her passive, which increases damage against debuffed opponents, She can single-handedly wipe through an enemy's health bar during the course of a fight. Azusa is excellent at clearing single-target firing drills, bounties, scrimmages, and total assault Hieronymus as a result. And I've even seen teams that run her for total assault Kaiten and even Bina because of how absurd her damage output is. However, Azusa does require some setup to fully maximize her damage output. Her EX skill costs 5, which means that you'll have to carefully time when you place buffs on her to make sure that you can cast her skill shortly after. This means waiting until you have 7 to 9 EX bars available, so you can buff her and then cast her EX skill, and you'll preferentially want to wait until either she or another party member has debuffed the enemy, just so that you can maximize the power of her rifle shot. In addition, because Azusa is heavily geared towards single target damage, she can be a little less useful for regular mission clearing, but it's still powerful enough to justify running her. Overall, Azusa is an excellent damage dealer, and if you're able to plan carefully around debuffs and buffs, she is indispensable for clearing a huge amount of content. It brings me tremendous joy that she is available from the Total Assault shop, as she is a fantastic damage dealer that can fit on so many teams. Azusa's Recollection Library unlocks at Friendship level 5, and she is a permanent character obtainable by making gacha rolls or by using purple coins in the Total Assault shop. In Azusa's alternate form, she is finally able to loosen up just a little bit, as her dear friend Hifumi takes her to the beach so that they can experience a great summer vacation together. Just like her regular form, Swimsuit Azusa's EX skill deals a huge amount of damage to a single target, while also inflicting that enemy with chill damage for 20 seconds. Her passive skills increase her attack power, as well as her crit damage every 35 seconds, and she has a 30% chance to debuff an enemy's defense during her auto attacks. All of this makes Swimsuit Azusa an excellent damage dealer, which is quite fun for single target firing drills and hard missions, but her greatest utility lies in her passive skill debuff. On paper, it might seem like it has a low chance to debuff an enemy, but it's surprisingly reliable during the course of a fight, to the point that Swimsuit Azusa can be a valuable asset for all Mystic Total Assaults, and even Total Assault Bina, just by running her as an auto attacker. As a result, she is very flexible, as both an auto attacker and as a single target damage dealer, as her defense debuff getting triggered intermittently for allies can be fantastic during the course of a fight. To reach her full potential, however, she is a bit of an expensive character to build. Her defense debuff passive greatly benefits from being at really high levels, as the debuff becomes much larger at level 7 and above, and leveling up her attack, equipment, and her EX skill guarantees that she can be a useful auto attacker or a single target damage dealer when needed. If you do have the resources to invest in her, Swimsuit Azusa is an excellent damage dealer and can be run in a huge variety of teams for harder content in the game. Swimsuit Azusa's Recollection Library unlocks at Friendship level 5, and she is a limited character who is only available during the Summer's Sky Wishlist event. The Trinity Remedial Knights serve as the school's medical force, but they have a bit of a reputation amongst the district's student body, and some of those rumors are attributable to Asagao Hanae. Despite her excellent healing capabilities, Hanae has a tendency to go a little too far with patient care, sometimes using her patients as practice for needle injections or other frightening procedures, when she isn't scaring her patients with questionable medical ethics, Hanae helps to clean up after the Remedial Knight's captain on her many escapades. Although her methods are rather questionable, Hanae is still a trained healer. Her EX skill will gradually recover health for a selected ally, while her passive skills will increase her own healing capabilities, as well as the crit damage for all allies. In addition, every 25 seconds, she increases the defense of the ally with the lowest HP on the field. As a healer, Hanae is excellent for getting characters back up and moving again, but her greatest utility lies in her third passive that unlocks when she becomes a 3-star. This passive massively increases the crit damage of all allies, and it has the exact same scaling as some of the best support characters in the game. As a result, she is a fantastic buff support who can increase the damage output of your on-field characters, while also providing healing when your characters need it. That being said, Hanae's healing is entirely based on her EX skill, meaning that you won't get passive healing activation that some other healers have, and the healing that Hanae does have is gradual over time, so it is more risky to use if an ally is very low on health, or if they are taking a huge amount of damage while the healing is happening. Hanae's EX skill also costs 4 to cast, which does feel pretty steep with how slow her healing can be, especially when other healers can immediately heal a chunk of damage for that same EX cost. However, the trade-off is that Hanae's healing does not require the ally to be stationary, so they can continue receiving healing as they move through a stage, and the increased crit damage from Hanae's passive can make allies a lot better at tearing through enemies. I've therefore found her to be a very defensible healer for mission clearing, as well as healing-based firing drills and even total assault. And investing in her crit damage passive can yield tremendous benefits if you want to run her on your team. Hanae's Recollection Library unlocks at Friendship level 6, and she is a permanent character obtainable from gacha rolls or by using gold coins in the Total Assault shop. When the Remedial Knights begin their yearly donation drive, Hanae is swept up by the holiday spirit and dresses up as Santa to give out presents. Christmas Hanae's EX skill casts a wide AoE onto the battlefield that will very slightly heal allies over time and creates one Holy Knight's blessing in the process. Holy Knight's blessings are created every time she casts her EX skill and can be stacked up to 15 times, with each Holy Knight stack improving Hanae's healing by a pretty small percent. Her passive skills increase her healing capabilities, as well as the crit damage of all allies, and every 35 seconds, she increases the recovery abilities of one ally with the lowest HP. I am a firm believer that almost every character in Blue Archive has a niche where they are playable, so it brings me great pain to admit that Christmas Hanae, despite how absurdly adorable she is, she does not have a clear niche. Her passive skill is the same as her regular form, which does mean she will massively improve the damage capabilities of your team, but her AoE healing, it's unfortunately quite limited. In theory, her AoE healing would be fantastic, as the AoE radius is pretty large, and would be great for healing allies over time, especially with an EX cost of 5. But for some reason, the scaling of her actual healing is really limited, even after pouring resources into her skills and healing equipment. Not only this, but the healing is only marginally increased with every Holy Knight's blessing, which can only be stacked by casting her EX skill again, or by casting Christmas Serena's EX skill. It makes me suspect that the developers were worried that her AoE healing would be too powerful if they increased the scaling, but the trade-off is that her healing is so limited. I'm really not sure I can advocate anyone build her. If nothing else, if you do happen to obtain Christmas Hanae from your rolls, I would definitely recommend unlocking her recollection library, as it's absurdly cute and it makes me smile whenever I see it. If you're able to make her work somehow, let me know, because I would sure like to know. Her scaling is just really rough. She just doesn't heal very much and it makes me sad. Anyway, Christmas Hanae's recollection library unlocks at friendship level 5. And she is a permanent character obtainable by making gacha rolls on any banner. Trinity might be home to its fair share of eccentric students, but no student on campus is quite as notorious as Urawa Hanako. Known for marching across campus in nothing more than a swimsuit, Hanako moves to the beat of her own drum. Despite her free-spirited attitude, Hanako is one of the most intelligent students to ever attend Trinity, and she has quite an extensive network of allies in the highest offices of the school as a result. Hanako pours her unabashed energy into her role as a healer, where her EX skill drops a wide AoE of healing onto the battlefield and gradually recovers HP for any ally inside it. Her passive skills increase her own healing, as well as the healing capabilities of all allies, and every 20 seconds, she increases the defense of the ally with the lowest HP for a short period of time. From a visual design standpoint, Hanako's EX skill has a fantastic UI, as the ground literally glows pink, which makes it super easy to tell who is actually getting healed on the battlefield. Hanako's healing can be very useful for mission clearing, but she really excels in healing-based firing drills, where she increases the healing capabilities of other characters on your team while also providing healing herself. When it comes to mission clearing, I've found Hanako to be a little trickier to use than some other healers, just because her EX skill is a little expensive, and it also requires that allies stay in one spot, which is not always the most practical. This movement restriction, as well as her passive skills benefiting fellow healers, is why I tend to run her primarily for firing drills. But if you do want to run Hanako for missions, she is very playable and has a relatively quick uptime on her healing once it's on the field. Just make sure you practice the timing of her EX skill so that your characters don't start running the second you drop her 5-cost healing ability. Hanako's recollection library unlocks at friendship level 2, and she is a permanent character obtainable by making gacha rolls or during Trinity-themed events. Just like Gehenna's prefect team, Trinity also has a militia to ensure that their mischievous students don't cause trouble, and that militia is the Justice Task Force. As the Justice Force's vice president, Hanekawa Hasumi helps to ensure that troublemakers are apprehended as quickly as possible, while also preventing rival schools from launching attacks on Trinity's borders. When Hasumi isn't tracking down meddlesome Trinity students, she often finds herself trying and failing to resist the allure of highly caloric sweets. Hasumi's firepower as the Justice Force's second-in-command is not to be underestimated. Her EX skill launches a high-powered shot at a single opponent, and her passive skills massively increase her crit damage and crit rate, particularly after reloading her weapon. Despite being one of the first characters that every player unlocks, Hasumi's damage-dealing capabilities are quite high. She can be a formidable force for clearing missions, But where she excels the most is single target firing drills and even total assault, especially with investment in her passive skills and equipment to increase her crit capabilities. Hasumi's EX animation does have a considerable wind-up, however, so there is a non-zero chance of whiffing an attack during regular missions if another character happens to finish off that target first. This is much less of a concern for firing drills and total assault, but it is important to be aware of that it takes a little bit of time for her to actually get that shot out once you cast her EX skill. If you do like her playstyle and are in need of a good single target piercing character, Hasumi can be well worth the investment, particularly as a student that every player unlocks at the start of the game. Hasumi's Recollection Library unlocks at Friendship level 8, and she is obtained for free just for starting the game, although you can also obtain her LFs from Trinity-themed events. While Hasumi's regular form embodies her role as the Justice Force Vice President, her alternate form sports the uniform for the Kivotos Halo Festival. Sports Day Hasumi pits her competitive spirit against her regret from eating sweets, powering her up into a formidable ally. Her EX skill is a flexible single target attack that costs either 3, 4, or 5, depending on how much of your EX bar is available. And the power of this attack increases with every increased EX cost. Her passive skills increase her crit damage, as well as her damage output against large enemies. And every 25 seconds, she deals a high-powered shot to a single enemy. As a mystic damage dealer, Sports Day Hasumi's flexible casting cost is honestly pretty fun for a variety of game modes. Her EX skill is very spammable as a cost of 3, whereas if you let it increase to 4 and 5, it becomes pretty tremendously powerful, especially against larger enemies. As a result, Sports Day Hasumi is a fantastic addition to Mystic teams for mission clearing, firing drills, commissions, and total assault. However, the flexibility of her EX skill does make Sports Day Hasumi a little trickier to play than other characters, as you will have to decide if you want to immediately activate her EX skill when it is at 3, or wait for it to continue increasing until it reaches 5. This makes her gameplay a little different from other characters, where you can normally bank their EX skill and wait until the opportune time to cast it. But the trade-off is that if you do bank Sports Day Hasumi's EX skill, it will deal a lot more damage just to make up for it. If you enjoy playing around with this flexible casting cost, then Sports Day Hasumi is well worth building for a variety of game modes. Sports Day Hasumi unlocks her Recollection Library at Friendship level 2, and she is only obtainable from the Get Set Go Halo Festival event. Despite being an excellent student and a helpful friend, Ajitani Hifumi struggles with low self-esteem and frequently characterizes herself as nothing more than an ordinary girl. However, through her determination, compassion, and resiliency, she has served as a powerful ally within the Masked Mizugi gang, as well as the Makeup Work Club, which has given her slightly more confidence in her own abilities. When Hifumi isn't lending her aid in a variety of conflicts across Kivotos, she is the city's resident Momo Friends otaku, collecting every piece of merch she can get her hands on. Hifumi's adoration of Momo Friends combines with her tactical experience in her gameplay. Her EX skill throws a giant Pororo animatronic, which lands on the battlefield in a blast of damage and taunts any surviving enemies nearby to attack it. Hifumi's passive skills increase her and Pororo's HP, and every time she uses her EX skill, she increases the cost recovery of all EX skills for 5 seconds. Hifumi also shoots a stronger gunshot at one opponent every 35 seconds, decreasing that enemy's accuracy as a result. As an AoE damage dealer and utility character, Hifumi is a ton of fun to play. The radius on her AoE Pororo attack is quite large, catching a wide swath of enemies whenever Pororo lands, and the taunt on it is quite reliable for keeping enemy attacks off of your allies. The bonus cost recovery passive also makes it more affordable to cast Hifumi's EX skill, which is a huge bonus when it costs 5 to cast. I've had a lot of fun using Hifumi for running missions, commissions, and mob-based firing drills, and I've even seen some players use her against her arch-nemesis Pororodzilla to great effect. Hifumi's EX skill does have a slight wind-up animation, so you'll have to make sure to anticipate that when you're trying to catch mobs in her AoE. In addition, Hifumi massively improves with considerable resource investment into her HP and her attack, as Pororo will deal more damage and be sturdier if you do so. And this can be a little expensive if you're just starting out. However, if you're also a big fan of Hifumi, I have had a lot of fun using her for mission clearing and commissions, as she does a fantastic job at wiping out mobs of enemies, as well as keeping them off of your allies. So I think she's well worth the investment if you do like her and her playstyle. Hifumi's Recollection Library unlocks at Friendship level 8, and she is a permanent character obtainable from gacha rolls, or by grinding hard missions 5-3, and hard mission 10-3. In an effort to give her friend Azusa a fantastic summer vacation, Hifumi takes the risk of, borrowing, quote-unquote, a tank from Trinity's storehouse so that they can hit the beach together. The Swimsuit Hifumi rides her newly christened Crusade tank into battle, dishing out attacks from the relative safety of her borrowed tank. Swimsuit Hifumi's EX skill summons her onto the battlefield, where Crusade will shoot at opponents in small AoE bursts for 50 seconds. Her passive skills increase Crusade's attack power, as well as the attack speed of all allies. And every 25 seconds, Crusade will shoot a smaller AoE attack at opponents on the field. Swimsuit Hifumi's AoE is quite good at clearing out mobs, which can be very helpful during firing drills or even total assault chesed, in theory. But I have to be objective here. Her EX skill is just way too expensive to run in battle. It costs an absurd 10 to cast, which is the single most expensive EX cost in the game. But she doesn't have the firepower or the staying power to justify that cost. Iroha, who is an absurdly powerful vehicle character, only has an EX cost of 6 to 8, depending on her EX level, and Iroha stays on the field 5 seconds longer than Swimsuit Hifumi. When Swimsuit Hifumi was first released, she was the first vehicle character in the game, and I have some suspicions that the developers were worried that she would be too powerful if her EX skill cost less to cast. They have certainly learned from that mistake with future vehicle characters, but that just breaks my heart even more that Swimsuit Hifumi had to suffer for the success of others. That being said, if you are stubborn like me and want to find a way to run her on your teams, she does have viability in counteracting attack speed debuffs during firing drills, but do be aware that her EX skill will probably be dead weight in your skill bar as a result. Swimsuit Hifumi's very cute recollection library unlocks at friendship level 5, and she is a permanent character obtainable by making gacha rolls. While most of Trinity's clubs operate relatively transparently, the Sisterhood is a more secretive organization, preferring to only engage with Trinity politics when absolutely necessary. As one of the strongest members of the Sisterhood, Wakaba Hinata is frequently tasked with arduous physical labor, whether that involves moving piles of tomes, chapel pews, or simply serving as security for Sisterhood functions. Despite being frequently overworked, Hinata is so dedicated to her job that she often has to be physically restrained to make sure that she gets appropriate rest. As someone accustomed to serving as Sisterhood security, Hinata is well prepared for battle. Her EX skill unleashes a huge AoE of mystic damage in a series of cascading explosions, and her passive skills increase her crit damage, as well as her damage against person-sized enemies. Every 20 seconds, she will also shoot a powerful shot at an enemy with the highest HP. Hinata is one of the few characters who has unique equipment, which substantially increases her base attack at friendship level 20, and at friendship level 25, her damage-dealing passive will also ricochet into a nearby enemy for additional damage. When it comes to clearing mobs, Hinata is a great AoE damage dealer. The radius of her EX explosions overlap with each other, making it quite easy to catch a large number of enemies in the blast. Combined with her increased damage output against person-sized enemies, this makes her quite effective at mission clearing, where her increased crit damage is excellent at wiping mobs during firing drills. Hinata's wide AoE does come with some notable caveats, however. Her EX skill costs 6 to cast, and with how low her base attack and EX damage scaling is, this does mean that she requires some considerable investment to really maximize her damage. If you enjoy her playstyle and want to make the most out of her expensive EX skill, I would advise sinking resources into her attack and crit equipment, and either pairing her with an EX cost reducing character, or simply committing to leveling her EX skill to make the most out of that wide AoE attack. I will note, all characters benefit tremendously from unlocking their unique equipment, but she really benefits from it because of that massive base attack spike. So if you do really like her, getting her to friendship 20 is a very good idea. Hinata's recollection library unlocks at friendship level 3, and she is a permanent character obtainable by making gacha rolls on any banner. Despite her history as a feared delinquent, Kyoyama Kazusa has become a valued member of the after-school sweets club, where she has been able to express her love of sweet treats and good company. Much to her surprise, Kazusa's time as a delinquent was such an inspiration to her fellow club members that they've embraced new identities. And despite Kazusa's many protests, she has begrudgingly accepted her role as a divine beast and boss of the newly christened after-school sweets gang. Kazusa's reputation as a gangster is not just for show. Her damage-dealing capabilities are tremendous, as her EX skill shoots a series of high-powered shots into a single enemy. Her passive skills increase her attack power, particularly after reloading, and every 30 seconds, her attack is further increased by a substantial amount. As a single target damage dealer, Kazusa is spectacular at tearing through an enemy, especially after her attack boosting passives are activated. Her high attack speed also makes her very reasonable for mission clearing. Even without casting her EX skill, but where she really excels is single target firing drills and total assault Bina and Hod. That being said, Kazusa's EX skill does take several moments to unload damage, which is less of a problem for firing drills, but is a notable concern for enemies that use stun attacks or rapidly shift zones, such as Total Assault Bina. This can blank part or all of her attack if an enemy suddenly moves in the middle of her casting her skill. But this is a fairly minor complaint, and it's mostly about a boss attack pattern. So it can largely be counteracted just by learning boss movement patterns, so you can avoid activating her skill at inopportune times. If you do enjoy her playstyle and are in need of a good single target damage dealer, Kazusa is a fantastic character to build, and is well worth the investment into her skills. Kazusa's Recollection Library unlocks at Friendship level 5, and she is a permanent character obtainable by making gacha rolls. As one of the rookies of the Justice Task Force, Shimoe Koharu feels like she has large shoes to fill, and desperately seeks to prove her worth as a member of Trinity's militia. However, despite her determination to serve as an arbiter of justice, Koharu has quite the obsession with X-rated romance novels, and this internal struggle causes her considerable anguish in her Justice Force duties. As an on-field striker, Koharu is both a healer and an AoE damage dealer, with her EX skill launching a wide AoE that will heal allies and simultaneously deal damage to enemies caught within it. Her passive skills increase her overall attack, as well as her healing capabilities every 30 seconds. And if an ally ever drops below 50% health, Koharu will throw them a chunk of healing to try and make up the difference. All of this makes Koharu a tremendously useful ally and a very fun character to play. Her EX skill has incredible utility as both an AoE heal for allies and an AoE blast of damage for opponents. And with it only costing 3, it is absurdly spammable throughout a fight. In addition, it can be placed just about anywhere on the field, which makes it very flexible for targeting enemies or allies as you need. Koharu's ability to automatically heal an ally if they drop below 50% is also tremendously useful, although it does have a 20-second cooldown. So if multiple allies are below 50%, she'll either want to use her EX skill to make up the difference, or just rely on a second healer if you need it. Koharu's utility for healing and damage dealing makes her an excellent character for mission clearing, as well as healing-based firing drills and for total assault Hieronymus. That being said, Koharu's damage-dealing capabilities are relatively modest at lower EX levels, so she is a character that greatly benefits from investment in her attack equipment and her EX skill. She isn't quite as expensive to build as other characters, which is great, but she is someone who will benefit tremendously from every resource you put into building her. In addition, Koharu's passive cannot heal herself, so you'll want to make sure to keep an eye on her in case she requires healing herself. As a versatile character who can fit many niches, Koharu is a fantastic addition to the game, and well worth building if you happen to roll her. Koharu's Recollection Library unlocks at Friendship level 6, and she is a permanent character obtainable by making gacha rolls on any banner. Although the Trinity Sisterhood is notorious for being secretive and cautious of outsiders, Iochi Mari is the exception to this rule. Her endless kindness and compassion for others makes her beloved amongst the student body, as Mari will lend aid without prejudice to anyone who needs help. Mari's healing nature translates into her gameplay as a support character, where her EX skill casts a shield to protect one ally, while also removing a debuff or status ailment from them. Her passive skills increase her own crit rate, as well as the max HP of all allies, and every 25 seconds, she will shoot a small AoE explosive at a group of enemies. When it comes to survivability in missions, Mari is excellent at keeping allies up with her increased HP passive, and she can massively protect a single ally with her shield, making it so that your tank or frontline characters can take less damage during the course of a fight. Her ability to remove a status ailment or debuff with her EX skill is especially useful for Total Assault Perodzilla, where the boss will place an armor-shredding debuff on your tank and tear through their HP if this debuff is not removed in time. Mari's ability to contribute damage is unfortunately more limited, despite her passive skill granting her increased crit rate, as her base damage is quite low, and the only way to raise it is to level her attack equipment, which I would argue is a bit of a bad investment given her overall skill set. If you do run Mari for your teams, anticipate that she herself won't be contributing too much damage, but she will help with survivability throughout the course of a fight. Mari's Recollection Library unlocks at Friendship level 3, and she is a permanent character obtainable by making gacha rolls. During the Kivotos Halo Festival, Mari's helpful nature makes a full appearance as she provides directions, refreshments, and answers questions from the many students visiting the event. Unlike her regular form, Sports Day Mari works straight from the field as a support character, with her EX skill healing allies in a wide AoE radius around Mari's location. Her passive skills increase her healing capabilities, especially if an ally has 30% or less life, and every 45 seconds, she will heal herself and the ally with the highest defense on the battlefield. As an on-field healer, Sports Day Mari is fantastic at getting allies back on their feet, as her EX skill has a wide AoE that can catch your entire team within its radius. Her passive ability that allows her to massively heal any allies below 30% life is absolutely fantastic for running missions or joint firing drills. She can also be quite helpful in Total Assault Hieronymus, where her healing can trigger debuffs on the boss. Playing Sports Day Mari does come with some important caveats, as unlike other healers, her EX skill cannot heal herself, so you will have to either wait for her other passive to activate every 45 seconds, or have a backup healer or shielder just to make sure that she doesn't go down. In addition, her healing AoE is centered around her character, which means that if any allies run too far forward or are outside of her range, they will not receive her healing, so make sure to carefully time her EX activation. All that being said, so long as you keep a careful eye on her health and where your allies are, Sports Day Mari is a fantastic on-field healer. And if you like her playstyle and utility, definitely make sure to snag her when her limited banner comes around again. Sports Day Mari unlocks her Recollection Library at Friendship level 3, and she is a limited character who is only available during the Get Set Go Halo Festival event. As one of the Justice Task Force's aces, Shizuyama Mashiro is a powerful force to be reckoned with. She can knock out troublemakers from the shadows with her long-range sniper rifle, and although she's a girl of very few words, her trustworthiness has earned her great respect from her Justice Force superiors. As a backline damage dealer, Mashiro is excellent at sniping enemies from afar. Her EX skill shoots a high-powered shot to a single target, with a 50% chance to deal a burst of additional damage with that shot. Her passive skills increase her crit rate and the accuracy of all allies, and every 20 seconds, she shoots a small AoE blast into a clustered group of enemies. When Mashiro is at the height of her power, she is a devastating damage dealer. There is something tremendously cathartic about hitting an opponent with her EX skill and watching her win that 50-50 chance to smite her enemies with an extra burst of damage. Her increased crit rate makes her a beast during single target firing drills, where she can easily tear through an opponent. However, her other passive skills are slightly more niche in their application. Increasing ally accuracy is good, but isn't quite as useful as some other passive skills from different support characters, particularly when it comes to content clearing. This can be really useful for firing drills where accuracy is decreased, so do keep her in mind for those in particular. In addition, I will admit that Mashiro's 50% chance to deal extra damage can make her a little unpredictable, as she can sometimes wipe out a powerful enemy, or they might still be standing after her EX skill activates. All that being said, I have really enjoyed Mashiro as a single target damage dealer, and if you also enjoy rolling the dice for a tremendous payoff, she's a fun character to run for missions and firing drills. Mashiro's Recollection Library unlocks at Friendship level 8, then she is a permanent character obtainable by making gacha rolls or by using coins in the Tactical Challenge shop. Although Mashiro often spends her time in relative isolation, she is immediately accepted into the rambunctious Trinity group for their beach vacation, allowing her to come a little more out of her shell. Swimsuit Mashiro's EX skill deals a chunk of damage to an opponent, while also decreasing that opponent's evasion. Her passive skills increase her attack power, as well as the accuracy of all allies. And every 30 seconds, she increases the crit damage of the ally with the highest attack by a pretty substantial amount. As a damage-dealing support, Swimsuit Mashiro is a pretty powerful character. It is really satisfying to lay into an enemy with her EX skill, which is very good at bringing an enemy down, and if they do survive her initial attack, the massive decrease in evasion makes it easy for other allies to whittle them down. This makes her much more reliable for mission clearing and firing drills, as well as Total Assault Pororodzilla if you need a good mystic damage dealer. A Swimsuit Mashiro's ability to buff your most powerful character every 30 seconds is also a massive boon. Just like her regular form, Swimsuit Mashiro's other passive skills are a little more niche compared to other supports, as increasing ally accuracy is a little less useful than increasing attack speed, power, or even crit buffs, which makes her a little outclassed for harder game content. But if you enjoy how she plays and you like her utility for mission clearing and firing drills, then she can be very fun to build with relatively low investment. Swimsuit Mashiro unlocks her Recollection Library at Friendship level 5, and she is a limited character who is only available during the Summer Sky Wishlist event. As the self-proclaimed head troublemaker and third divine beast of the After School Sweets Club, Yutori Natsu is obsessed with more than just the tastiness of sweets. She loves the romantic idea that sweets represent, and her fellow club members have become quickly accustomed to her impassioned speeches. Natsu's obsession with sweets doesn't end with her speeches. She makes excellent use of her favorite treats on the battlefield, where her EX skill recovers her HP and also removes a status ailment or debuff from herself. Her passive skills increase her max HP as well as her self-recovery abilities. and every 30 seconds, she will throw a pie to a nearby ally, which can bounce up to 3 times through other allies to grant them all an attack buff. As a sturdy tank who buffs her allies, Natsu is a ton of fun to play and performs her role excellently. Her survivability is quite high with her increased HP, as well as her ability to regenerate health from her EX skill. But her passive ability that tosses an attack buff is my favorite aspect of her gameplay. Even if your allies are spread out on the battlefield, so long as one of them is nearby Natsu, you have an excellent chance of all allies gaining an attack buff, as Natsu's sweets bounce from one ally to the next. And not only is this fantastic for mission clearing, but Natsu's ability to remove a debuff from herself makes her absolutely fantastic for Total Assault Podzilla, where she can immediately remove that massive defense debuff and heal some lost damage at the same time. That being said, there are definitely some considerations for playing Natsu. And because her EX skill can only heal herself, you will probably still want a good healer or a shielder just to get through mission stages, as she isn't able to taunt enemies, and that can result in allies taking on some damage. This is much less a problem for Total Assault, as she will draw a lot of aggro for being at the front of your team, but it's something to keep in mind when using her for regular missions. In addition, there are times when allies will be positioned too far apart from each other in order to receive her attack buff, which is definitely a feels bad, but I've found that to be relatively infrequent in my many playthroughs with her. It's kind of funny. Natsu was actually the entire reason I ever found out about Blue Archive. I saw her cafe animation show up on my Twitter feed from Japanese players, and I became immediately obsessed with her excellent animation and how adorable she was. It's all thanks to Natsu that I hit that pre-registration button for the Blue Archive global launch, so on a personal level, I will always have a special place in my heart for Natsu, bringing me into this game. Natsu's recollection library unlocks at friendship level 5, and she is a permanent character obtainable by making gacha rolls on any banner. Although the remedial knights have quite the reputation for their eccentric members, Sumi Serena is seen as highly dependable when it comes to healing wounded students. Her kind, compassionate personality is a balm to anyone who interacts with her, although Serena sometimes becomes too overly concerned about the health of others and will keep a uncomfortably close eye on them as a result. Serena's reputation as an excellent healer translates well into her gameplay. Her EX skill drops a care package onto the field, which the nearest ally will run up to in order to recover a large amount of lost HP. Serena's other passives increase her healing capabilities, as well as ally resistance to crowd control effects like stun and fear, and every 35 seconds, she recovers a huge amount of health for the ally with the lowest HP. Despite starting out as a 1-star character, Serena is easily one of the most powerful healers in the game. Not only does her EX skill cost 2 to cast, which is very repeatable through the course of a battle, but her passive makes it so that she heals allies automatically throughout the battle, which is so useful for keeping allies up and moving. Serena is fantastic for mission clearing, as well as bounties, scrimmages, everything. You name it, she can do anything, including Total Assault, particularly Hieronymus, where her healing can debuff the boss. Serena's EX skill does require a little bit of practice when you're first starting out, as the ally who is closest to her care package will be the one that opens it, And if allies are clustered together, this can be a little trickier to figure out how to draw the right character towards the care package. The more you practice with it, the easier it is to get this right, but it definitely takes a bit of learning when you're first starting out. Serena's crowd control passive is also a little lackluster, as crowd control effects are not the most common in the game, and they don't require too many defenses as a result, but this is a very, very small nitpick to her overall kit. I don't generally like insisting that certain characters have to be built, as there are so many characters in this game for that to ever be the case. But Serena is one of the few characters that I think every single player should put at least some resources into building. She is so easy to obtain and so easy to level up, and with how good her healing is, she will immediately make your missions easier to run, even at the highest levels of the game. Serena's Recollection Library unlocks at Friendship level 6, and she is a permanent character obtainable by making gacha rolls or during Trinity-themed events. As the Remedial Knights prepare for their annual donation drive, Serena takes up the holiday spirit with her alternate form. Instead of focusing on healing, she is a support-based character who will work directly from the battlefield. Christmas Serena's EX skill casts a wide AoE around her location, which will buff the crit damage of nearby allies for 50 seconds. Every time she casts her EX skill, she will also gain 1 Holy Knight's Blessing, which will very slightly increase the damage dealt by piercing characters affected by her crit damage buff. Christmas Serena's passive skills increase her max HP, as well as her evasion while reloading. She will throw random gifts to nearby allies that will increase their crit damage by various amounts. Unlike poor Christmas Hanae, rest in peace, beloved adorable girl, Christmas Serena is mercifully a pretty reasonable support character. Admittedly, the piercing damage bonus from her Holy Knight's blessings is pretty marginal, so that's not great, but that just means that she doesn't have to be paired with piercing damage dealers, as the base effect of her EX skill is still powerful enough to make allies deal more damage regardless. Her ability to cast an extra crit damage buff is also helpful for dishing out damage, although the randomness of this ability can make that crit damage buff a little more variable. That being said, Christmas Serena does have decent survivability, with increased health as well as evasion, which makes her very stable for mission clearing if you pair her with powerful allies. Because the crit damage buff is centered around her location, you'll have to be careful to cast it when allies are nearby, otherwise they might not get the benefits of her crit damage bonuses. That being said, the buff does last for 50 seconds, so even if they temporarily run out, they might end up back inside the bubble once everyone moves forward in a stage. If you do happen to roll Christmas Serena and you need a good on-field support, she is worth trying out just to see if you like her gameplay, as she can very reasonably increase ally crit damage throughout the course of a battle. Christmas Serena unlocks her Recollection Library at Friendship level 2, and she is a permanent character obtainable by making gacha rolls on any banner. Within Trinity's massive campus lies an even more massive library, where ancient tomes and catalogs lie in wait for those interested in reading them. Endo Shimiko is one of the stewards of this library, serving as the public face of the library committee, and helping visitors find whatever books they're looking for. Just like her role in the library, Shimiko serves as a support character during battle, where her EX skill summons a pile of books to provide cover to allies. As the pile of books hits the battlefield, all allies in the surrounding vicinity will also have their defense increased for 30 seconds. Every 35 seconds, Shimiko will cast a shield on the character with the lowest HP, and her other passive skills increase the strength of her shield, as well as the overall defense of all allies. As a support character, Shimiko is pretty much entirely based on survivability. Her passive skills improve the defense capabilities of on-field characters, and her EX skill tries to summon cover to keep allies shielded from oncoming attacks. I've seen some folks actually use Shimiko for Total Assault Shirokuro in order to block Shiro's attacks, although you do have to invest pretty heavily in Shimiko's HP to make this viable, and you'll want a good understanding of the boss fight just to know exactly when you need to drop her cover. And that unfortunately brings me to my major assessment, which is that despite how adorable she is in the game, Shimiko's utility as a support character isn't quite as strong as some other characters. Her usability for missions is more limited, as allies might ignore her cover completely and start running forward the second she casts her EX skill. Her shield-granting passive is definitely more useful, although I've personally found her to be outclassed by other shield characters in the game. That being said, if you do like Shimiko and you want to run her, you'll just want to invest heavily in her HP just to make her cover as sturdy as possible, particularly if you're using her for Shirokuro to block incoming attacks from bosses. Shimiko's Recollection Library unlocks at Friendship level 6, and she is a permanent character obtainable by making gacha rolls on any banner or during Trinity-themed events. Although most of Trinity's troublemakers are handled by the Justice Task Force, those that fall through the militia's grasp will end up in the crosshairs of Trinity's secondary force, the Vigilante crew. Preferring to work out of the public eye, the Vigilante crew has helped maintain order within Trinity when the Justice Task Force is indisposed, and none of their members are quite as tactful as Morizuki Suzumi. Quick to respond to outbreaks of violence, Suzumi specializes in flash grenades to stun her opponents and seize the upper hand. Suzumi's EX skill throws a flash grenade at a group of opponents, exploding in an AoE of damage upon contact. At EX levels 3 and above, this attack will also stun opponents hit by her blast. Her passive skills increase her evasion, as well as her damage output against enemies inflicted with stun or fear, and every 25 seconds, she will deal a stronger shot to a single enemy. As a character available to all new players, Suzumi is very defensible for content clearing. Her AoE has a wide enough range to hit a reasonable number of opponents, and if her EX skill is increased to level 3, she will start dealing out very respectable damage from her passives whenever enemies are stunned. The main drawback of Suzumi is that her base attack is noticeably low, meaning that she requires considerable investment to compete with other AoE damage dealers in the game. Investing resources to get her EX skill to level 3 is highly preferable, and leveling up her attack equipment is invaluable for making her damage output more feasible. With all this being said, she's definitely outclassed by other characters in the game, but if you enjoy her gameplay, she can be a fantastic character for mission clearing, especially if you invest in her equipment and EX skill. Suzumi's Recollection Library unlocks at Friendship level 6, and she is obtained for free just for starting the game. Although Although Hasumi is often mistaken as the head of the Justice Task Force, the title of president actually resides with Kenzaki Tsurugi. Known for blowing holes through walls instead of just using the door, Tsurugi's sheer strength is tremendous, but it is dwarfed by her profound difficulty communicating, which makes it quite hard for anyone besides Hasumi to actually understand what she's saying. As an auto-attack based character, Tsurugi normally shoots single target shots, until her EX skill is activated, at which point her auto attacks become massive AoE blasts that tear through mobs of opponents. Several of Tsurugi's passives relate to defeating enemies. Every time Tsurugi defeats an opponent, she recovers a portion of her health, and she also has a moderate chance of reloading her AoE EX attack immediately, making it so that she can attack with her AoE shotgun blast for even longer. Her final passive increases her overland run speed. Tsurugi is one of the few characters who has unique equipment, which substantially increases her attack speed at friendship level 20, and at friendship level 25, anytime she defeats an enemy, she will heal for a substantial amount and massively increase her attack speed. Tsurugi is a fascinating character to play. She is excellent at tearing through mobs of enemies, especially huge mobs of robots during firing drills, commissions, and total assault chesed. And the more enemies she defeats, the more health and the more AoE shotgun blasts she can set off before needing to activate her EX skill again. The ability to regenerate health is pretty important, as Tsurugi is one of the few frontline characters who doesn't use cover, which means she will draw considerable gunfire from enemy attacks. However, you should still keep an eye on her during the course of a battle, as her healing abilities aren't always enough to offset enemy attacks, and her recovery abilities are dependent on her landing the final blows on her opponents. This is considerably easier to accomplish with waves of enemies, but during mission clearing, this can sometimes be a little less reliable, so you'll still want to run a healer or a shield-granting character to make sure she doesn't go down. In addition, her EX skill has a pretty considerable wind-up animation, meaning that the time between activating her EX skill and her actually dealing AoE damage is considerably long. I've found myself activating her EX skill as quickly as possible in battle as a result, just to make sure that she is ready to start firing AoE blasts as soon as enemies reach her location. With all these caveats out of the way, Tsurugi is a powerful character, especially for wiping out mobs of enemies. And if you like her playstyle, she requires relatively low investment to deal huge amounts of AoE damage. Tsurugi's Recollection Library unlocks at Friendship level 5, and she is a permanent character obtainable by making gacha rolls or from the Joint Firing Drill shop. Although Tsurugi has difficulty communicating, she is slowly able to overcome this during her summer vacation. Swimsuit Tsurugi excitedly jumps into the summer spirit and the bloodshed therein during her trip to the beach. Just like her regular form, Swimsuit Tsurugi is an auto-attacker that switches up her gunshots when her EX skill is activated. However, while her regular form focuses on AoE shots, Swimsuit Tsurugi is geared towards single target damage, as her EX skill turns her auto attacks into even more powerful gunshots. Every 35 seconds, Tsurugi will deal a high-powered shot to a single opponent, and her other passive skills increase her attack speed during this single shot, as well as throughout the battle. As a single target damage dealer, Swimsuit Tsurugi can quickly tear through enemies during regular missions, but she shines the brightest in joint firing drills and total assault, where she can deal a pretty significant amount of damage to a boss whenever her EX skill is activated. Similar to her regular form, Swimsuit Tsurugi does not use cover, but unlike her regular form, she doesn't have the same healing capabilities. So I've generally found myself using her less for regular missions and more for firing drills and total assault, as her high HP and defense does make her pretty playable for those. That being said, she's still a lot of fun to play, especially when you activate her EX skill. So if you do want to run her for regular missions, just make sure that you've got a good healer or a shielder on your team, and you can run her in a variety of different missions. Swimsuit Tsurugi unlocks her recollection library at friendship level 3, and she is only obtainable from the Summer Sky wishlist event. Although Shimiko is often mistaken as the library's steward, the true head of the library committee is Kozeki Ui, who isolates herself from the public eye while she dives through ancient tomes. Those who do know of Ui's existence refer to her as the magician of the old library, as she is a master of book restoration and can fix even the most damaged texts if given sufficient time to mend them. Ui's magical ability to mend books is not the only form of magic that she possesses. Ui's EX skill will cut the EX casting cost of a selected ally in half, rounding up to the closest whole number, while also increasing that ally's attack power. This EX cost reduction will last until that ally has cast their EX skill twice. Ui's passive skills increase her own crit rate, as well as her attack speed after using her EX skill, and every 40 seconds, she increases the crit rate of all allies surrounding her. As a support character, Ui is incredible at making expensive EX skills more affordable. With just one EX activation, she can reduce a 7 cost to a 4, a 5 cost to a 3, and a 4 to a 2, which is absurdly useful on its own. But she also boosts that ally's attack for 46 seconds, making her a fantastic support for a variety of game modes. Ui's small AoE crit buff that activates every 40 seconds is also quite nice for on-field damage dealers who might be nearby. However, Ui's tremendous utility does come with considerable resource investment. Her own EX skill starts out at a cost of 5, which is pretty expensive for what it does, and will only reduce to 3 when her EX skill reaches max level. This is pretty expensive to accomplish, so if you do want to run her, be prepared to sink some resources into leveling up that EX skill so that she is a lot more affordable to run on your teams. In addition, Ui suffers from the same problem as Akko regarding visual design, where it can be difficult to see which character is being highlighted by Ui when deciding who will receive her EX reduction, especially when characters are clustered together. This gets easier the more you practice, but it's something to keep in mind. One other quick note is that unlike Akko, Ui is unable to select vehicle characters to receive a cost reduction, even if they are currently on the field, so do keep in mind that she's only going to be able to reduce EX costs for your on-field strikers. Despite all of these caveats, I have so much fun playing Ui through so many different game modes. And if you have the resources to invest in her, she is well worth building to make your more expensive teams much easier to build. They don't even have to be expensive. You can just use her for 4-cost characters, and they're very good. Ui's Recollection Library unlocks at Friendship level 6, and she is a permanent character obtainable by making gacha rolls on any banner. As the final member and the 4th divine beast of the after-school sweets gang, Ibaragi Yoshimi is easily embarrassed by the antics of her clubmates, but she will always have their backs when they need it. In her spare time, Yoshimi goes to great lengths to secure spots for limited edition sweets, but she is more than happy to share her spoils when she does secure them. Yoshimi's EX skill shoots a projectile onto the field, stunning all opponents in an AoE around it before exploding a few moments later. Her passive skills increase her crit rate, as well as the crowd control power of all allies, and every 25 seconds, she shoots an AoE bomb at a group of opponents. As an AoE damage dealer, Yoshimi is very respectable, as her AoE will first stun opponents so that they stay in place before her explosion goes off, which largely counteracts the wind-up animation from her EX skill. Although this is fantastic for mission clearing, Yoshimi shines the brightest in Total Assault HOD, where she is an excellent replacement for Chihiro if you don't have her. Both characters have the same passive, exact same passive, for buffing crowd control effects of allies. And although Chihiro's stun is ultimately more powerful, Yoshimi is still excellent for breaking through HOD's pillars and overall defenses. Yoshimi's damage output is definitely a lot more lackluster, as her base attack and damage scaling are rather low when she starts out. So if you want her to dish out damage, you'll want to make sure to invest in her attack equipment and EX skill. With all this said, I think that Yoshimi is a very underrated character for mission clearing, as well as mob-based firing drills and Total Assault HOD, especially in the absence of Chihiro. So if you're looking for a stun-based piercing character who can deal AoE damage, then Yoshimi is very easy to obtain and build in the game. Yoshimi's Recollection Library unlocks at Friendship level 6, and she is a permanent character obtainable from gacha rolls on any banner or during Trinity-themed events. And with that, these are all the students from Abydos, Gehenna, and Trinity that are currently released on the global server. As for which students from these schools I'm most looking forward to, there are a lot of exciting characters coming in the next few months. But I am extremely excited for the limited banners of New Year Haruna, as well as New Year Fuuka, and New Year Junko, who's a 1-star character from that event. The return of New Year Aru and Mutsuki, so I can snag New Year Kayoko and Haruka. The addition of Mine, Megu, and Sakurako to the permanent roster. And last but not least, the hyper-limited banner of Misono Mika, which I am very, 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 very excited about. If you're anything like me and you struggle to pick which banner to pull on because you love everyone too much, my best advice is to try and save up 24,000 pyroxene for hyper-limited banners. This will allow you to guarantee pity on the hyper-limited character, while also getting a ton of other characters, since there will be a rate increase. That being said, if you do know which characters you want to snag, just save up for them. If you want to know how to make your characters more playable for Total Assault, as well as just how to strategize for those battles, period, I would highly recommend the channel of the YouTuber Kasu. He puts together the best Total Assault guides I have ever seen for both regular and insane runs, and is extremely detailed with breakdowns on characters for different stages. Like, just look at this. Look at this. This is incredible. He has this for, like, all of them. All the Total Assault battles. It's incredible. It is frankly a crime that I didn't find him before my first gameplay video. Otherwise, I would have plugged him there. But I am going to plug him here and in every video I can, because if you haven't already checked out his channel, I would highly recommend doing so. A huge thank you to the hard work of the Blue Archive fan wiki, which was a great resource for compiling information on these students, especially recollection libraries and EX animations that I wasn't able to film myself. In addition, the entire student review series from the YouTuber Valiant was extremely helpful for cross-referencing information and for detailing student skills. Valiant's content tends to be geared towards meta late-game platinum grinders, but it is still a great resource for getting first impressions on new characters from the Japanese server. So I'd recommend checking out his channel with one big caveat. Because Valiant is on the Japanese server, he has a few very spoilery videos from the main story, which happened after I recommended him in my last gameplay video. I hope that didn't spoil things for people who went to check him out. If you do want to avoid that, I would wait to check out his channel until Volume F is fully released on Global. Thank you so much for watching this and making it through to the end. This video was absolutely wild to put together, and it's only the first of two, so look forward to my second video where I cover the rest of the students, including Millennium, which has the most students out of any school right now. This took a lot of research, playtesting, and cross-referencing with other Blue Archive guides just to make sure I was being as balanced as possible when assessing students' strengths and weaknesses. But I hope this was a helpful look into the gigantic cast of Blue Archive. Until next time, be well, and I'll see you all when our next Blue Archive video drops.